So very good morning on the second day of the Danube Ports Days 2024 edition. It's the pleasure to welcome you again on time, and we hope that you have enjoyed the first day, especially also the dinner and the cruise. We had excellent weather. I think you could also enjoy the excellent view of Budapest. Thank you for being with us, and thank you for the team organizing it. Today it's day two, where we will have two sessions. The first one with presentations and some interactive involvement of the audience also online via some Mentimeter questions and discussions, and we will have then a very lively panel discussion after the coffee break. From my side, not to take too much time, two organizational elements. Speakers, please really come close to the microphone. That was a feedback from yesterday's session, especially for the ones or from the ones sitting in the back. And also, since we will have presentations today, if you have an issue with visibility, feel free to log into the WebEx meeting, mute your microphone and turn off the camera, and then you will see the slides also on your own screen. That's also a good practice from the past months. And then, without further delay, so far people say that this is the best Danube Ports Days conference of the year. So with that pace, I give the floor over to Gert, who will chair the next 100-minute session around emission calculation and digitalization for ports. So Gert, welcome, and the floor is yours.
Thanks, Robert. Good morning, everyone, to day number 2, session number 3. It's been a wonderful day yesterday, so in the spirit of yesterday, let's go on and make this as good a day as it was yesterday. And thanks for that river cruise, which was excellent. For today, I mean, we're living in a rapidly changing world, and ports need to adjust, inland ports, and they are. So today's topic on greening and digitalization is important. We will have, for the first part on greening, we will have 5 speakers. They will have short and snappy presentations, but feel free to ask, raise questions. This is about interaction. But be known that after these 5 sessions, we will have some room to further discuss before we move on to digitalization. Now, I shouldn't start before thanking some people. Pro Danube, Charlotte, Robert, and colleagues, we know how much time you put into this. It's fantastic. For our host, Danube Commission, Manfred, the team, thanks so much. It's truly a unique place that we're in. It's an inspiration. Marta from the European Commission, as funding the project, not personally, but the Commission is. Thanks also for the guidance and the patience with us, and of course all participants for being here. It's truly a great community, and this event has been ongoing for years, also survived the COVID period, and is now alive and kicking and looking to stay around. We will have a range of speakers, partly from the Green Inlet Port projects, Jasper Alit, Anna-Nicole, Johanna, Charlotte, and Robert will tell us about it, but also John and Ellen are here to present, jointly providing good balance and mix of stories on hopefully pragmatic elements that can be useful for the port community. Now, Robert is very strict on timekeeping, so we need to move on. First presentation is Jasper on my left-hand side. Jasper, take it away.
Yeah, thank you very much, Geert. First of all, microphone check, am I loud and clear? Perfect. All right, up to me the challenging task to, it's moving. Up to me the challenging task to be the first presenting after yesterday's very well organized boat session. So I'm going to be talking you through the Green Inlet Ports project, and I'm going to be talking you through the guidance and tools that we're developing in the project. And I think you can clearly see there's a clear need for guidance and tools. As you can also see in these two policy documents, I think all of us know this, sustainable and smart mobility strategy, which calls for ports to be multimodal, zero emission nodes, and which calls for ports to be best practices or the best practices that should follow, that must become the new normal, and that should enable more sustainable forms of connectivity, as well as the NEADIS reaction plan for 2021 to 2027, which calls for environmental management systems, which we are currently developing within the Green Inlet Ports project, which we will be further explaining about in today's session, and which we will further develop over the next year and test with inlet ports in reality. Now, to become concrete, what are the tools? What is the guidance that we will develop in the Green Inlet Ports project, and that we have developed within the Green Inlet Ports project? If you look to the first 2 years of the project, we have some very concrete outcomes that we will be sharing today with you. Under task 1, we have developed a port environmental impact calculator, which is a calculation tool for 18 types of different environmental impacts in the chain, and on which Nicole and Anna will further explain in today's session what this is about and how it can be used by inlet ports to let's say establish an environmental benchmark. In task 2, we have looked into, the Blanco team has looked into good practices on urban mobility and short-range IWT, and they have made a quantified estimation of the rollout potential for urban and short-range freight. They've been looking into, and I think this very well links to the discussion that we've been having yesterday. They've been looking into the potential impact from modal shift. They've analyzed success factors, and that provides input to a debate on what is needed to actually achieve this modal shift in the urban mobility and short-range IWT, and to actually realize this impact when it comes to urban and short-range freight IWT. Then task 3 has been focusing on digitalisation. Here we have developed a digital maturity assessment tool, which is a tool developed by the Pro Danube team to assess digital maturity level. This tool is establishing the foundation for digitalisation guidelines that will be developed within this project as well, and which we will also touch upon as part of today's session. Now, these different type of tools, guidance that we have developed within the project are not standalone. They ultimately feed into task 4, which is on the implementation of environmental sustainable management systems. Already mentioned it that as part of the NEADIS reaction program, they call for environmental sustainable management systems. So these tools, they will feed into environmental and sustainable management systems. And what this will be about is that it will not only establish a benchmark, it will not only establish a benchmark, it will not only establish a diagnosis, but we'll also be looking into actions, solutions, recommendations for inlet ports to overcome their environmental challenges and to reduce environmental impact. So we have different tools which we will be presenting today, which we will be interacting with you upon. However, they're not standing alone. They will be feeding into environmental sustainable management systems, which is the important part for next year in this project, which we will be testing with pilot ports, and on which Joanna from Pantaya will also speak in today's session. So a lot of guidance, a lot of tools from this project, which we will be introducing to you today, but obviously it's not the end station. I would say it's the start of our journey, as we will obviously like to test and validate and get your feedback when it comes to these tools. So next week, 7th of November, we'll also mention it at the end of the session, but let me already mention it right now. We'll have an interactive workshop at the Port of Brussels, but you can also participate online, where we will test. We'll have a little bit more time, and we'll look into these tools. We'll look into potential applications of these tools, how these tools can be used, how they should be tailored, how they should be further developed in order to ensure that they do meet and that they do address the environmental challenges of inland ports. So we would very much like to welcome you and invite you to this workshop next week. And obviously in 2025, we're going to be having further events very much focused on the integration of these tools into our environmental sustainable management systems, as well as concrete solutions, recommendations, and suggestions as already introduced. Updates will also be published on the project website and on our project LinkedIn, which obviously we invite you very much to follow, and also the tools that we're going to be talking about today. Very soon, they will be made available on the Green Inland Ports project website. And once they are made available in an online format, obviously, communication from us will follow about it. So that is a brief snapshot overview of what's happening within the Green Inland Ports project, which is ending my presentation, I think right on time, which is the floor back to you, Geert.
Yeah. Okay, thanks Jasper for giving this brief overview, also serving as a placeholder where different parts of the GRIP project come in. Having said so earlier, we've also Alan here. Alan will, on behalf of the MultiRELOAD project and as Chief Technical Officer of Smart Freight Center, present on greenhouse gas emissions and notably calculation. And so please.
Great, thanks. I'm going to try the handheld and stand up so you can see. So we can assess which is the best way to go. So thanks very much for the invitation to be here. It's really a pleasure. I'm going to try to get through quite a lot quickly, so we'll see how we go. So firstly, we're talking about obviously port and terminal greenhouse gas calculations, and I think we know why, because often there's a lack of awareness and understanding of actually what that really means in practice for the ports and terminals. And at the same time, there are a lot of new reporting requirements that are coming. Lots of legislation across all the different transport sectors linking into the terminals and the ports that connect them. And really all that is going to require much more emphasis on the calculation and reporting of the greenhouse gas emissions. So just raising that awareness and education is a key part, but also making sure that there's a harmonization of the approach that's taken to make sure that everybody is doing things in the same way. And also you've got the need to understand that and quantify the amount of greenhouse gases, because if you can't do that, then there's no way that you can actually understand the impact of the efforts that you're making to decarbonize both within your system and the broader transport chain. So, and also we're doing this obviously within the MultiRELOAD project, and it's aiming to help our project evaluation as well. So a bit of a selfish perspective there as well from the project. Very early in what we were doing, we ran a user survey, working also with EFIP and Feeport and their members to try to get a bigger sample size than just from within the project. And what we were told was basically that the ports were trying to look at their total carbon footprint for their organization, mainly for internal purposes, sometimes for reporting. And a lot of them were using their own spreadsheets, trying to follow the greenhouse gas protocol. They really felt the need for additional guidance and calculation tools to help them on what they were trying to do, because I think they felt they were a little bit left on their own at that point. So the fact that we're coming with guidance and we're hearing about tools, hopefully they'll find that a welcome step forward. And the fact that they're following the greenhouse gas protocol or trying to is in itself important, because that doesn't give you very strict, do it this way type of an approach. It gives you overall approaches. You can try this, you can try that, but it's not a very, very formal standard. And that all taken together means that you're left with a situation where there are multiple different ways of doing something, even within the greenhouse gas protocol. And all that really does lead to problems at that point. So beyond the survey, we then looked at, well, actually, already exists. And we distinguish two cases. There's the reporting of the emissions along a transport chain, which is something that I've been involved with a lot through the ISO 14083 standard. And obviously, the terminals have a really key point to play in that, because they contribute themselves to emissions, but also, as we were hearing yesterday about multimodality, they support the opportunity to bring lower emission transport modes into a chain. The alternative, which is what the ports were talking about, is the total organisational footprint, or what we also refer to as the greenhouse gas inventory following greenhouse gas protocol. And so you've effectively got two different routes to report there. And I think one good thing is that the information that is collected for ISO 14083 would also feed in to certainly reasonably large parts of the inventory from a terminal perspective. So just to summarize that, effectively, you've got a reporting matrix, either looking at inventory or looking at transport chain and who's involved with what. I'm going to spend the rest of the presentation talking about inventory, and that could apply either to the Port Authority in its broadest context or to the terminal operator, obviously as one entity within the port. And I think that in itself is a key thing, because we know ports are really quite complex potentially, with many different organisations co-located there, and the port is dependent on those other organisations for its overall impact. That brings complexity, not just in terms of operation, but in terms of calculating the greenhouse gas inventory. I'm going to ignore the second bullet point now, because it's a technical point we don't need to get into this morning. So when it comes to inventory, you've really got three things in my view. You need a methodology that's quite clear and precise. You then need the data to feed into it that also needs to be of decent quality. And once you've done the calculation, ideally you would have some sort of assurance or third-party check, just to make sure that that's all been done correctly. Within the greenhouse gas protocol itself, what's it asking you for? Basically, it splits things out into what it calls three scopes. You've got direct emissions, which are really what are supposed to be within your own control. You've got scope 2, which is a type of indirect emission really linked to the electricity that you yourself would be using as an organisation. And then you've got scope 3, which is built up a huge range of different components, many of which are actually going to be linked to emissions that are not generated within the port area. And this is one of the key points that I'm now going to keep coming back to for the next 3 or 4 minutes. Because one of the things that I think we really need to be thinking about is actually what are the boundaries, what is it when a port measures its greenhouse gas emissions and its inventory, what is it really doing? What does it actually want to be quantifying? Because some of these, for example, just that scope 3 category 1, purchase goods and services. If you buy in a laptop or a photocopier, the emissions occurring probably somewhere in a manufacturing plant somewhere in China. But if you buy that, according to the Greenhouse Gas Protocol, that is part of your inventory off-site that you need to be looking at. Whereas potentially a vessel which is moored up in your port, the emissions from that, according to Greenhouse Gas Protocol, may well not be actually formally part of your inventory. And you've really got to understand actually, therefore, what it is that you're trying to do, what the purpose is, and what you're following. So running through those scopes in more detail very quickly, scope 1 emissions are generally coming from combustion of fossil fuels for all sorts of different purposes, within your scope where you're responsible for operating them and purchasing the fuel. If a port does happen to generate its own electricity, and we know some do, then if there are emissions from that electricity generation within the scope of the port, then you would be reporting that through your scope 1 as well. And the way that you would be doing it was basically looking at how much fuel you use, what the emission factor of that fuel type is, to come up with a total amount of greenhouse gas emissions. Should be fairly straightforward. It may well be that you're using some of these fuels for multiple purposes, and in an ideal world, you'd be quantifying it against each of those purposes. You can probably track how it's being used so that you can really get an insight and address where your hotspots are. The approach for Scope 2 is very similar. It's just based on your electricity consumption. The vast majority of that is going to be provided through the grid in all probability, and you basically, again, combining an amount of electricity with a grid factor. If you are generating your own electricity and you're not selling it off into the grid, but using it directly on site, then you would be able, if you can quantify that, to use a zero emission factor for that element. If you have a green electricity contract, then you would be able to report that as a secondary reporting output, but the primary output, according to Greenhouse Gas Protocol, is always the grid electricity. So that would give you an idea of the impact that your green contract is having compared to the grid. And then we come to Scope 3. Quantifying Scope 3 emissions in a credible manner is difficult just because there's quite often limited access to the data. By definition, the emissions are being generated by someone else within your supply chain. And hopefully we'll hear more about that in the next session, or the next presentation rather. It means that you have now limited knowledge of the activities of those organisations within your value chain. There's a huge wide range of Scope 3 categories. From that Greenhouse Gas Protocol perspective, all this is really linked on what the contractual links are that you as a port have with the different entities that you interact with. So whether it's the things that you buy in yourself, but I think for a port, more likely it's to be, what are the co-located businesses where you're letting out space to others who are doing things within your area? And what responsibility you have and what opportunity you have to understand what those businesses are doing on your patch, so to speak, and how you can get hold of that information and quantify it. And one of the key things in the work that we've been doing is to really note that what a greenhouse gas, or what's being asked of a port or what it's calculating may not necessarily be what it thinks it wants to know, or what others think it is reporting. And what I've tried to do is really get to a visualization of what that means in terms of the boundaries that cover these three different options. But the ultimate thing is the port just reporting for reporting's sake? Or is it actually trying to answer specific questions from people who want to know? Or is it doing this because it wants to be actually active in decarbonisation, both of itself, but also the broader transport chain? And I gave this presentation also remotely to the ESPO sustainability group for seaports last week. And I think there's a lot of interest, actually, a lot of strategic thinking that actually they see their place as part of a much bigger multimodal supply chain, and they want to have that influence. And if they want to have that influence, they need to understand actually how to quantify that so it gives the best view of that. And so what I want to leave is effectively these three diagrams, which are complicated, but that's deliberate, because there are so many things that potentially go on with within a port area. The Port Authority's own activities, the terminals, other businesses, warehouses, all with activity going in and out of them. And if you just take a geographic boundary, which is maybe the basis of the existing guidance that maybe comes from IAPH and the IMO, literally, once you go across the port area's boundary, something counts for the emissions, and if it's outside, it doesn't. And you end up with splitting, a bus transporting workers into the Port Authority, public transport, it starts to count when it goes over the boundary. So from that perspective, it can get quite complicated, but at least you get a picture for a particular area if you can get all that data in. The Greenhouse Gas Protocol takes a very different perspective. It looks at actually each activity, is there a contractual link, and whether or not that is then included. So some things that are happening within that boundary don't count, whereas that are happening away from the port area do. And some things that you think are included wouldn't be. And then the final is basically to try to bring all this together into something which is more comprehensive and strategic. And there isn't necessarily a single right or wrong answer. I think what's needed is actually consensus amongst the ports to decide collectively what it is that you want to be doing, because they're all possible. You could write guidance for all of them. You can do tools for all of them. You want to.
Thanks so much, Alan. Very interesting points. Whether ports are internally or externally motivated, I think there will be left or right needs to assess, calculate and report on the footprint, whether it's carbon or beyond. And the question is then how. You're referring to guidelines and tools that are needed and are being developed. That makes it interesting because within the project we've been developing as well, and you see that happening at different elements. And I don't want to draw a parallel to placing a man on the moon, but there also we saw various initiatives at the same time. Now this may be of a bigger leap to mankind, but still I think it's very interesting because we have these different initiatives, and if we bring that together, we'll get to these standards or harmonized standards that are needed. So on that note, please, Nicole, Anne, please inform us on what you've been developing as part of the CE Delft team.
Okay, thank you, Geert, and good morning, everyone. Thank you all for being here. My name is Anne Klein, and the colleague next to me is my colleague Nicole Imhuls. We are both working for CE Delft. That's an independent research and consultancy company with a focus on sustainable environment and located in Delft in the Netherlands. And today, my colleague Nicole will give you a live demonstration of our Port Environmental Impact Calculator. That's a tool which we have developed as part of the Green Inland Port project. But before Nicole gives you a live demonstration of the tool, I will first explain you what the tool is and who all can use the tool. But now I lost the PowerPoint presentation. Okay, he's back, thank you. Okay, next slide. No. Yeah. Oh, yes, is it working? Okay, now what is our Port Environmental Impact Calculator? It's a self-assessment tool, and the tool can be used to determine the environmental impact of an inland port. The tool is intended mainly for inland ports, but can also be used by terminals and other parties within the port. And the tool consists mainly of two parts. The first part is an input field, which is necessary to collect all the data of all activities which can take place in a port. And the last one is the result field, which show you the environmental impact of all the activities within your specific port. We are currently in the final phase of completing the tool, and once the tool is ready, it becomes public available for free on our Green Inland Port website. Before we will show you how the tool looks like, I will shortly explain you the approach, how we calculate the environmental impact in this tool. First, we started with make an inventorization of all the activities which can take place in a port. It's all dependent on the specific type of inland port. And we focus in our tool on the energy consumption. We focus only on the energy consumption of all these activities. And all this, with this energy consumption and the association and the corresponding emission factors, we can calculate the amount of emissions within a port. And using all the amount of emissions, at the end, we can determine the environmental impact. And as I already explained you, there can be a lot of different activities in the port. So to create an overview within our tool, we make use of different type of modules that together represent all the activities within the port. And we make a distinction between waterbound activities, like different type of terminals and vessel movements, and non-waterbound activities, such as, for example, a rail terminal, a chemical company, or an oil refinery. And as I already explained you before, the tool has an input field. This is necessary to provide all the data to calculate the environmental impact. And per module, you have some mandatory fields. Nicole will show you this later. And these mandatory fields are the basis for this tool. These mandatory fields use background modules and assumptions to estimate the environmental impact. However, if you have more information available, such as, for example, the type of fuel you're using, for example, at a container terminal or a crane, you can fill this in the optional fields to be more specific, and then you get a more accurate environmental impact calculation. For this type of information, you must probably be in close contact with the terminals and other parties within the port. And then finally, when you have filled in all the required information or optional information in the input fields, you can click on Submit in the tool and you will get the results. The results provide the contribution of the port to 18 environmental impact categories, which are all important for a complete environmental impact assessment. However, for this project, our focus is on the climate impact, which is probably also known to you as global warming potential or carbon footprint. And in our tool, we will show you the overall port climate impact, but with a breakdown per module. And we also give different figures for the waterbound activities and for the non-waterbound activities. And now I would like to give the floor to my colleague Nicole, who will show you a short live demonstration of our tool. Thank you for listening.
Okay, good morning. Normally it is loading my screen. Yes. So everyone can see the a preview of the port environment impact calculator. So we're still working on it. It's a web tool, so you can save it at any moment in a link. You can share the link. It's quite a field of, there are several fields that you have to fill in, but for the sake of the talk, I've already pre-filled all the fields. So as Anna said, there's first a data input part. And there are several modules of activities that occur in a port. So you can fill in information about the employees in the port, about the terminals. So for example, the total amount of dry bulk transshipped, per year. And then once you press submit, this usually goes quite fast, then you go to the results. And so the results at the moment are the climate impact or the carbon footprint. I'll just focus on the graph on the left. So this shows you for everything that's filled in the tool, for all these modules, what the carbon footprint is in kilotons per year. And so for this fictitious port that I made up, basically, you can see which parts of the port contribute the most to the carbon footprint. So in this case, for example, the cargo vessels contribute for over half, and the dry bulk terminal for about a third. And so that's interesting to know then where in the port the hotspots are. So then let's quickly go back to the input. Let's say we're going to look at the dry bulk terminal. It's about 8 kiloton CO2 per year. And see what we can use the tool for. So because as Anna said, there are optional fields in case you have more data. So the minimal required data for this particular module is that you fill in the amount of dry bulk transshipped, and then there are default values that the tool can use to estimate, okay, this is your energy use, and so these are your emissions corresponding to that. Now let's say that you actually do know more about your energy use, then you can select that here. I'm not going to explain all details now, but then you can specify more specifically what your electricity use is, whether you're using the country grid mix or whether you have generation of electricity on site, for example, if you have solar panels. And you can also adjust all the types of fuels. So right now the tool was assuming that only fossil diesel is used. Now if I adjust this, and let's say that 10% HVO is used instead. And now I submit it again. So let's see what happens. So before this was about 8 kiloton CO2 per year, and now you see it's 7.5 kiloton per year. So you can this way use the tool also to assess if you would implement theoretically certain changes, how would that affect the overall environmental impact? It's very high over, but it's a good first start. I'd love to talk more about all the details of the tool, but for the sake of time, I'll stop now. But we're very curious to hear also what ports find of it. And if you have tips, questions, let us know. So that's it.
Thanks, Anne. Thanks, Nicole, for giving us a bit of a insight and a sneak preview of what will come later. Getting back to what Alan said before and what John will be presenting in a little bit, is that these tools, they need to be pragmatic. This tool has tried to do so by allowing different levels of entry. For example, just based on throughput, but also if energy consumption is known. So in that way, it will try to be pragmatic. Also here, attractive is, I think, the fact that the tool goes beyond greenhouse gas emissions and also considers other environmental impacts. And the fact that CE Delft has such a strong knowledge and understanding by developing the manual on external impacts is certainly helpful. So there is a whole model and all kind of default values behind this. We hope to be able to present more. Next week, we'll be testing the tool with some of the ports. So rest assured that there will be more on it. And as presented earlier, it will be made available for your use and for your ports. Now, thanks again. Let's turn to something that has been applied in practice. John, please, floor is yours.
Just bear with us while we get the slides. Very good. Okay, thanks everyone for having us here today. We're excited to talk about how RightShip are helping ports get insights into air emissions through data and digital solutions. And we're actually here off the back of a project that we've been doing with the Port of London to help them get insights into their greenhouse gas and air emissions from the ship side in their port, where they've got 95 miles of riverway. So who is RightShip? For those that you don't know, very quick introduction. We are the leading ESG-focused digital maritime platform. We provide transparency, insights into crew welfare, safety, and the environmental side of shipping for all stakeholders within the maritime ecosystem. And today I'll be focusing on the air emission side, in particular the tool that we have for the ports and terminals to look into the ship side emissions. So I think Alan touched on this a little bit earlier, but obviously there's a lot of complexity in the stakeholders that are interested in what's going on with the ports. There's lots of different drivers in terms of the regulations, whether that's the IMO level for the ships, the regional government, the national governments, you've got the ship owners, you've got the charterers, you've got the various industry groups as well. Consumers are often referenced as an important stakeholder who should be driving towards decarbonisation. Obviously, coastal communities are interested in what's going on in the port from an air quality point of view, and there's often reports coming out from local communities on what's going on the ship side. And then, of course, finance to help drive forward any changes. And the regulation interactions are an important one to think of. If you think of the maritime ecosystem from the transit side and from the import side, there's a number of regulations that are trying to drive towards decarbonisation. It's very complex. You've got the design side on the ships. You've got the operational requirements, whether it's CII or Fuel EU Maritime. You've got the increasing or hopefully increasing uptake of future fuels over the next 5 to 10 years. You've got the import emissions as well. So you have things like onshore power. You've got the just-in-time or single maritime windows, just-in-case arrival. And all these things are working together to help drive towards decarbonisation and improved air quality. So if you think of the shipping ecosystem and where the emissions sit, well, it really depends on what the profile of the port is and what the profile of the vessel segment is. And this nice little bar chart on the left-hand side kind of splits down the different vessel segments. And you can see it green at the top, that's at berth or anchorage. And so like row packs, they might have a slightly higher emissions profile within the port area at those operation modes compared to, say, a bulk carrier. And then you can see what's happening on the transit legs. So you can kind of, depending on what your port operation is and the type of vessels you've got coming in, you can start to see what the impacts might be. I've referenced the regulatory environment. Stakeholder pressure, there's increased desire to get an insight in what's going on with the vessel emissions. Green corridors, obviously with the Danube, looking at that whole 2,000 kilometres, I believe it is, and what the opportunities are there, but also looking beyond that to what's happening in the sea as well from the whole ecosystem point of view. So RightShip, we're working with about 32 ports globally now. We've got global coverage, and we provide insights into their port emissions. This bar chart on the left, we've got an aggregated for 11 of the biggest ports that we work with, and it's the different vessel segments. So you can see the average anchorage times. Quite often we talk about sail fast and wait as a problem within the industry. So, you know, working with sort of other digital solutions that look at the transit time and try and impact on the anchorage waiting times, a real sort of low-hanging fruit for the ports. And you can see on the right-hand side there that we've got an example of a large river port of where the different emissions happen with the 4 operation modes. So RightShip developed the MEP, the Maritime Emissions Portal, about 4 years ago, but it's in its current guise. It's been around for about 2.5 years. And essentially, the reason that we developed it, we wanted to develop a tool for ports and terminal managers to get an insight into what's happening with the vessel emissions within their port area. And we wanted to take away the heavy lifting of horrible clunky spreadsheets so that the environmental manager, the stakeholder in the port, at the click of a button could get an insight into what's happening in a particular area of the port or a particular vessel segment, even an individual vessel, so they can start to develop, deploy, and act on their decarbonisation and air quality improvement strategy. So it's a monitoring and measuring tool. It's there to set a benchmark on emissions, and then help provide visual insights and a data dashboard so that it takes away the heavy lifting. It's supposed to be really intuitive. And how we do that, we draw a geofence and we plot points of interest, so anchorage, maneuver zones, berths and terminals. And we combine that with AIS data, and we have an extensive vessel database where we have the technical information on the ship, so things like engine size, specific fuel consumption. And from that, we're able to calculate the vessel emissions based on the operating mode and the point of interest within the port or the vessel speed. And it's based on the Climate Change Information Kit, and we've tried to align it with the EMEA calculation methodology within Europe. It goes through an annual review, and we essentially get all this information and we provide it into a number of intuitive solutions. So heat maps is an easy one, and I think Jose referenced this yesterday in his tool. But the point of a heat map is it just points out where the hotspots are within the port. So there may be a particular anchorage or berth or terminal that you've got a problem with. And the idea is that this isn't a standalone tool. You're supposed to combine it with the other insights you've got in your port. So you might put it with a digital twin and you say, okay, this anchorage point, this berth, I'm going to try and reconfigure the way we do our operations. Let's see what the impact might be there. It helps ports and terminals prioritize their onshore power. So you might be a particular berth or terminal you're thinking investing in, but this insight might point you towards a different one. There may be a hotspot in a berth or terminal where you've got a problem with the infrastructure, a problem with the cranes, maybe the maintenance is ongoing and you're having a bit of a delay. Or maybe you could look at introducing another crane. So it's there to try and point you towards where the problems are, but it won't give you the solutions by itself. You have to combine it with the other bits and pieces that you're working on. And there's a number of different dashboards that we have that break it down between greenhouse gases, CO2e, the image here only has CO2, but we do methane and nitrous, and the air quality side as well. So obviously the local communities potentially more interested in the air quality. For your decarb strategy, you might be more interested in the greenhouse gas emissions, but both are equally important. They're two sides of the same coin. There's a number of dashboards that we have, and you're able to filter down between the different vessel segments, the different operation modes. So it's there to be intuitive and filterable, so you can start to drill down into the detail depending on what your focus is for the calendar year coming up. You might point out the low-hanging fruit. We drill down to the individual vessel level as well. So you're able to see the highest contributing vessels to your port emissions on scope 3. This doesn't mean that they're the worst vessels. It just means that they're contributing the most emissions. And that's an important distinction. But if you look at ports like Helsinki, they've done some really interesting actions with this type of information. They identified the vessels that are top 10 contributing over a calendar year. They were going through an onshore power project. They engaged with those technical managers, with those ship owners, and they said, look, we're investing in onshore power. We'd like you to do the same. And they were able to have quite a big impact on their emissions over that period. If you see the GHG rating there as well for reference, so RightShip has a greenhouse gas rating similar to what you have on electricity appliances in Europe, but we do it on an A to E scale. A is the most efficient, E is the least efficient, based on the design, based on EEDI, EEXI. Ports and terminals can use this as an incentive scheme. So the best performing environmental vessels, whether it's on the GHG side or like CE Delft on the whole environmental performance, there can be a fee-based scheme where the best performing vessels get a bit of a discount on the port fee and the worst performing vessels have a bit of an extra cost, and it can be a self-financing scheme where you take your admin cost out of it. Another insight you can get is the month-by-month impact. So you can see how you perform season to season. You can see how you performed against the previous year. And obviously that's important once you've got a baseline to validate the actions that you're taking are having an impact. One of the other things we've recently introduced as well is scenario planning. So obviously onshore power is an obligation for the large container and cruise ships through to ports through to 2030. And we have a bit of a tool which will help predict what the impact might be at a particular berth or terminal. And from that, you can use that to your access to green finance to go and get your onshore power installed, because obviously it's not cheap. So demonstrating that you've thought about the impacts of it, that you're focusing on the right area, is an important part of that process. So really the MEP, it's designed to be part of the digital jigsaw. It's not a standalone product. It's there to provide the insights. It's there to take away the heavy lifting from the environmental manager so they can get an insight into the shipping emissions, which are often difficult to calculate. Often the ports and terminals won't know what's happening on the ship, what's installed on the ship. One of the interesting things that we have, certainly on the ocean-going vessels, is energy-saving devices and equipment that have been installed to improve the design. So it's really there to be combined with things like the Internet of Things, so you can see what's going on with your port in terms of the operations on the land side. Smart sensors was referenced as well, so you can reference our calculation software against any local air sensors that you have in. Obviously, the local air sensors have the challenge that it doesn't just look at what's happening with the ship, it also looks at what's happening elsewhere. But certainly this is a powerful tool to sort of help you predict what you're going to do with your digital twins if people are looking at that type of technology as well. So myself and my colleague Ugel are here today. If anybody's got any questions afterwards, come and chat to us. But that brings my presentation to a conclusion, and thanks for listening.
Thanks, John. We have seen a different mixture of tools, very interesting. Alan, you mentioned the spreadsheets, also mentioned by you, John. We see tools being available at different levels. Joanna from Pantaya is going to present the ESMS tool as it's being developed currently. It's, again, a bit of a sneak preview, as this will have most attention the coming years within the GRIP project. But it tries to bring these tools, these pragmatic tools, to the ports. So, Joanna, please.
Thank you, Gert. Good morning, everybody. My name is Joanna Kourignotti. I am a consultant in Pantaya, a research consultancy in the Netherlands, and I will present you today how all these tools described by Anne and Nicole and also by Robert afterwards, they come together to a environmental sustainable management system, or as I will call it from now on, the GRIP ESMS. So what is our vision? Our vision is to provide inland ports with a tool that can help them in this journey towards sustainability and to reduce their environmental impact. But also we discussed a lot yesterday about ports being an integral part of the supply chains. We want to help them leverage the advantages of digitalisation to achieve that. Yes, there are already environmental management tools for maritime ports, but inland ports are a different case, different size, different type of operations, vicinity to urban centers. So they need a tool that can cater their needs and that it's tailored to them. Why should an inland port apply our GRIP ESMS approach? First of all, we provide tools that can measure environmental impact. Anne and Nicole already presented it, but and also their digitalization level. Robert will present this afterwards, but we help them go one step further and identify, okay, what are my next steps? How can I improve myself? We also provide them with guidelines to make sure that their local stakeholders, their business community, their environment is always engaged and in accordance with what they do. And finally, we provide them with a check, okay, what is the relevant legislation, international legislation and European legislation that is relevant in my case, and can I check if I comply with that? Now, basically our approach, you can see this in this diagram in the right. We want to offer a tool that it's online available, that it is modular. So it is made of basically two modules. You can see them in the left and the right, and two components, the horizontal boxes. The first components deal with the diagnosis. So what is my current state? My baseline scenario, let's say, and the second box deals with the next steps. What can I do to improve? Now, when we talk about modules, we have two different ones. The left side is the emissions, the environmental impact ones, that helps ports being more transparent on their environmental performance, and also identify steps and actions to improve their performance. And on the right side, we have the sustainable development system, where we see, okay, how we can use digitalization as a business opportunity to improve our business, and again, in a sustainable manner. We have in the middle the legislation, so there is a check of what legislation is relevant for the port. And finally, we provide some best practices of inland waterway transport services. So how we can use this short range inland shipping as a way to, as a business case, and also as a way to improve modal shift. As I said, our approach is modular, so the inland port can step out anytime it wants, can apply one or more modules, dependent on the needs anytime and on the available capacity. Now, regarding the diagnostic component, we already presented the environmental management tool, calculation tool, and Robert will present later the digital readiness part. Now, regarding the next step, the possible actions, we offer ports a set of best practices from which the port can learn what's happening in the sector. So similar ports with a similar profile, how have they addressed these issues, either in terms of environment, are there in terms of improving their digital level. And of course, we have the environmental impact profile, so the port can see, okay, where are my hotspots and what can I do about them? And also the digital readiness level, so where am I starting there and what are the next actions? What could be some probably low-hanging fruits that I could use? And then this is an ongoing process together with the stakeholders. So we give ports the guidelines, okay, which are the stakeholders that really impact the operation and what you're trying to achieve, how you can approach them, how to discuss with them. Do you need a survey? Do you need a workshop? Do you need one-to-one discussions with them? And what to ask them about what so you discuss with them. Now, as I said before, our tool is modular. It means that a port can have a light application, so they can ask, okay, where am I standing in terms of environmental impact? Okay, we give them the opportunity to use the calculation tool, again presented by Anna and Nicole. And for an inland port, in terms of capacity, what they need is around 2 to 3 days. And of course, there is the possibility of a more comprehensive tool implementation. So the port can go through all the steps and through all the modules. This is, of course, more time consuming. I would say that would require for a port around 7 days over time. Again, depending on the availability of data, how complicated are the operations of the port, and in what depth a port would like to go. I'm going to my last slide, but this is not the least important. Now, basically, it is the time to work together with the sector, to work together with inland ports in order to understand what they need, and to make sure that what we offer, what we develop, really caters their needs. So we will like to have some inland ports in our study to discuss with them, to work with them and improve our tool. So please make sure, please, if you're interested, contact me or here it's Jasper, so we can work together. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanna. Ladies and gentlemen, I think this tool means to beyond the diagnostic part, also as reflected by the speakers before, aimed at better understanding the environmental footprint, to also go beyond and to think in terms of goals setting and actions that can be linked to it. And that is things to come. Okay, we have had 5 presentations. It's been rather intense, maybe the sending part, but we have some time reserved for dialogue, interaction. Let me first see if there's any questions already for the speakers. I mean, we've gone from spreadsheets to ready available tools as presented by John. We've looked at sort of guidelines that are under development, as well as tools in progress. There is a question here, Manfred.
Yeah, thank you very much, Gert. Congratulations to the work of the consortium. I think it's really needed work also for making the greening of the ports and the port operations happen. So these guidelines, these tools are really essential. And that leads me immediately to the question. When we understand that these guidelines are then out, they are disseminated, you are doing a lot of more or less workshops to bring that into the arena of the ports for how can we make sure that they are really used, and become a standard, in every port. My question not only goes to the consortium, because the consortium has a deadline. I think it's end of next year. So also please, Marta, what are your plans to make sure that we really use these tools as a standard? That's one question. The second question is, in your project, you also have pilots foreseen. Is it planned that, for example, in one of the pilots, you apply all the guidelines and all the tools, and you make more or less a testimonial port, also a best practice port, because that could be also something where we then could permanently go back and let's say have also one source of information to be copied and paste. Copy and paste is quite often a successful business strategy, particularly in logistics. I was told about. So is that foreseen, or what are your plans?
Yeah, thanks. Excellent questions, Manfred. Maybe let's start with the second question as for the pilots, because that is spot on in how this project has developed. We have investigated the first years in research and developing tools that is becoming close to something which is ready for use. And then in the final phase, we are going operational, where we will work with 10 pilot ports, and everyone is invited to show interest, because we're in the phase of identifying and selecting the ports at this very moment. And then indeed, we'll bring the tools in practice, and we'll learn, and we will adjust and update, and indeed we'll serve it, bring it back to the sector. That's the purpose of the project, and that's how the European Commission has designed the project. And then whether it's copy or paste or integrating it in a way that's pragmatic or usable for the ports, that's up to the sector. Even more, we're hoping that we, at the end of the project, which is not around the corner immediately, but it's here within a year, that we can leave something behind that the sector can build upon and take along and further develop, whether it's on the sort of greening part, that sort of pillar of the tool, or whether it's on the digital part. I think our ambition is to develop tools that are pragmatic, practical, and the coming year, and that's where I'm getting back to your question, we will test it in real life and learn from that. As for your first question, on guidance, how can we make sure that standards will be developed that will be bring in practice? I think there is that, coming back to what was said earlier, there is the internal and external factors. I think there is a general acknowledgement within ports that there are greening obligations that need to be met. But moreover, there will be external pressure from legislation coming up on reporting of environmental performance. So ports, like many other organizations in society, will need to report on this. So this is something Alan maybe could elaborate upon, but this will be a reality. So the sooner ports and other organizations, for that matter, will start developing their own practices on identifying needs or their environmental impacts, the better it will be. And it will be complex for the reasons mentioned, because the port authority cannot do this by itself. It needs to collaborate with the stakeholders in port. As mentioned, as one of the complexities, there is that scope element on scope 1, 2, and 3. And the further down the line, the more complex the process will be, but it needs to be started. And I would invite everyone to start off it. I mean, many ports are already doing this, of course, but to continue to work on this and develop it, and hopefully initiatives as presented earlier can be helpful to the port sector. I see Alan is eager to add to this.
Yeah, for me, it was when I started looking into it, it was very interesting to see the focus on greenhouse gas protocol in the mind of the ports that were trying to do the work on the survey, because that is considered the starting point for corporates reporting their greenhouse gas emissions. But when you really do look into the setup that they've got there, and the contractual value chain that the greenhouse gas protocol builds on, you realize that it's not necessarily a good basis for what you might think a port might be reporting on. And that was the conclusion I came to. And actually what John presented actually brought it home to me, because you focused on all those maritime emissions. And by a strict definition of the greenhouse gas protocol, I don't think any of those would fall within the scope 3 of a port if you follow the greenhouse gas protocol definitions, which really brings home that message of you need to understand what it is you're doing it for. And I have no idea what's in the mind of the European Commission on this, but quite often you will find that legislation looks to other standards as a starting point to say, okay, do it this way, do it that way. And I think if there is legislation coming in this way, it needs to be thought through very clearly. What is the intention, what you build on? And it will, I think it will require some quite precise thinking to bring that forward.
Can I just add a quick comment there as well? I think that, yeah, you talk about the GHG protocol, but obviously, you know, that's on the greenhouse gas emissions side. But then you've got the air quality side, and there's already legislation in place in Europe in terms of air quality standards that the ports need to look at. And I would imagine that part of that would be the shipping side. So.
Yeah, thanks, John. I see Marta sort of closely or quickly getting to the table. So Marta, please.
Thank you. Just, a few words on my side. You well know that, creation of any strategy, any policy requires to have a good basis. It's not about our concept. We need data. We need information about, the current status just to create what should be done in the future. And that is why I think that what is done, here, it's a perfect basis. And it doesn't matter if we are going to come up with any legislation, I don't know, whatever, because at this stage, we do not have a specific plan. But we know that this data can help us in the future to design something what can help ports. And that is why, also I would like to invite all ports, especially from the Danube area, as, primary, this study was designed especially for this area to to jump into this system and try to validate, our calculator, because, the theory is one thing, and it would be good to, to test it in practice before we release our concept, and make it, feasible to use it. So that's all from my side. Quickly, thanks a lot.
Thanks, Marta. And yeah, let us extend the invitation again. It's you can also do free trial. It's free anyway, but you can also have a chat on what this can potentially do for your port. Next week, November 7th, we are doing with AFIP a workshop on the tool. So feel free to sort of get a flavor of it and join in. You can do that online or approach us over lunch or after the meeting and see what it could potentially do or after the meeting. I mean, all kind of options are open. Feel free to approach Robert because he's a very accessible person. And speaking of Robert, he's probably going to kill us if we go beyond our timetable. So previously, in order to engage some discussion, we developed some Mentimeter questions. I propose we skip them because they were just more for scene setting. And we have a second part of today's presentation, and that's on digitalization. So I would say, let's go digital. Charlotte and Robert and Khalid are a very digital combination. They will, Charlotte will take over this part and she will introduce the speakers.
Many thanks, Gert. So let's go. I will go short on the introduction part, which is actually introducing the results of the GRIP project, which are feeding into the master plan. And then I will give the words to Khalid from EICB about the gaps and barriers, which we identified. And master plan itself will be developed by Robert. So this part of the study, the objective of it was to assess the potential of digitalization for greening port operations, for ensuring multimodality, and for facilitating sustainable development of inland ports. For that, we had several steps and several key results, 5. And the key outcome of it is the digitalization master plan that will be the main part of today's presentation. So I will go to the 5 key elements. So we had the regulatory framework addressing inland port digitalization, an inventory of port cooperation and collaboration systems, process optimization and interoperability improvement, an inventory of good practices at EU and international level, and the identification of gaps and barriers in the implementation of digital tools. We'll start with the legal aspects. And there, the outcomes of the analysis was that there is currently no European or international legislation specifically dealing with the digitalization of ports. That means that there is a legal framework, but these are the more general acts which are applying also to digitalization. And these frameworks include then the privacy, general data protection regulation, data ownership, liability for defective software, liability of software users, cybersecurity. The second key result was an inventory of port cooperation and collaboration system. So there, I will go quite fast. I will just reading some key elements. So we had a description of port digitalization technologies and platforms and an assessment on their potential use in the greening. Also aspects on cybersecurity, selective digitalized environment management tools. We also had a survey in the first survey, several surveys actually in the GRIP project, and there we also have some parts on the practice. This is the nice graph that you see on the right side. That was also taken into account in this inventory. Port process optimization and interoperability improvement. The objective was to have analysis on the future potential of inland port digitalization. And the key considerations and challenges identified are listed in the list on the left side. I will not read them all, but give some examples like interoperability, data security and privacy, or regulatory compliance. And then some problems, needs, issues, challenges were also pinpointed. So, for example, the legacy systems or the lack of standards are some good examples, I think. The inventory of good practices at EU and international level. So there you see the map with 22 best practices or good practices from all over the world. So halfway Europe, halfway really international. So we had also North America, Asia, so some wide scope of examples. There we had also quite some interviews and intensive desk research. And each good practice quasi is each good practice adds its own fact sheet, specifically dealing with mentioning the category of digital tools, the stakeholders involved, and also the realized or potential impact. And now we are then going to look at the gaps and barriers analysis in the implementation of digital tools, and I give the floor to Khalid.
Yes, thank you. Also, thank you from my side for this opportunity to be here. The digitalization is key, and that is being prioritized by all ports. We can say it's at least in their top 3 priorities. And when it comes to implementing and rolling out this digitalization, it's important to see where the gaps are and where the barriers are. So the work that we have done is identify these gaps and barriers through 3 steps. The first one was desk research. A lot of work is being done already. We have DIVA, we have the DG Move vision on digitalization. We have the ongoing project with the intermediate results like Magpie, Pioneers, and Platina 3 in the past has already identified some gaps and analysis. So this was the first step, and then we had a survey. Unfortunately, the reactions on surveys is low, while the urgency is high. So here is the request. Please cooperate with surveys in general, especially if they are from ICB. Your input is very important. And the third step we took is interviewing experts. And we come up with, based on this analysis, with 4 categories of gaps and barriers. And we promised, especially the experts, to give these barriers and gaps a place, at least in the roadmap. So I have promised to ask questions for each category to our colleagues from Pro Danube. So be prepared. So these 4 categories are legal. For example, it's already mentioned. It's complex. It's new. It's scattered. Just to give you an example, Ellen just described these scopes. So this scope 3 is new for a lot of parties. So the world is broadened, huge. That was not expected. So and reporting is already mentioned yesterday. Also, we have this CSRD, corporate sustainability reporting, and underlying either directives or regulations. This CSRD, for example, refers to at least 16 other directives. So it's like laying a puzzle. You don't know the end picture, and you don't know how many pieces you need. So your knowledge is very important here. And 2 issues were mentioned as a big priority. Both have to deal with liability, so securing data, because it changes from hand to hand to hand in the chain. So who's liable for which part of this data? And also cybersecurity is very important. So those are, from the legal point of view, gaps that have been identified and standards or regulation are missing there. The second part is on the question, as I promised. On this first part, is how will the master plan address these regulation gaps, practically concerning liability and data security to ensure compliance and effective enforcement?
Thank you for the question. I dare to take it. As you mentioned, it's quite a complex issue. So we were also collecting with the involvement of Sasha Jovanovic, also doing dozens of hours of desk research and interviews that currently it's on the one hand quite loose because we did not find anything binding, as mentioned by Charlotte, anything binding which would specially address ports, but we could derive our recommendations from the general rules, what we have as for softwares or software products in a general level, coming together from the cybersecurity, from the data protection issues that you mentioned. Our recommendations will include a prioritization and categorization of those data and information fields and elements which are there in the daily business of ports and terminals. And this shall be kind of tailored and customized together with the port needs. So there has to be a very, very strong cooperation between the stakeholders, meaning owners of the ports and users of the ports. So this is a complex task, and we will handle it in this level in the master plan later this year.
Yeah, thank you. Then the second category is financial. Not a surprise. And here we can sum up three issues. The first is limited budgets. And if budgets are available, then priority for digitalization is less prioritized. Referring to this reporting and obligation to become greener, the reflex is to look at your scope 1 first, while perhaps the issues to tackle are outside your own scope. So this priority of budget is an issue. And also a complaint to say is the accessibility and to subsidies. It's complex and not familiar with this kind of opportunities for getting this kind of subsidies. So this is from the financial part. And also here we promise the expert to ask the colleagues preparing for this master plan, what provisions will be made in the master plan to support financial planning and investing in digital tools, especially for ports, smaller ports who don't have, who have restricted financial issues.
Yes,
I see nodding, so it's a good question.
Absolutely. Thank you for that question as well. What we have learned in our desk research and interviews and survey is that, yes, financials is a very, very strong question. Also comes together with the legal part. So our recommendations, our takeaways from the master plan will adhere on the one hand, or connect on the one hand to the legal gaps and barriers and status, what we just discussed, that we deem that some elements should be made mandatory to be used and to be applied. And several, especially the publicly owned ports and terminals, said that if there is a legal basis, they can refer to that, and then their owner, let it say a municipality or other public owner, needs to ensure at least part of the funding and financing. When it comes to smaller ports, what we will formulate is a prioritized digitalization, so not go from 0 to hero in 1 week, but assess yourself. We will come back to that later, and then we can recommend a step-by-step, a stepwise prioritized further deployment of your digitalization services and capabilities.
Thank you, Robert. Next slide, please. The third category is technical. So there, actually what we have already saw yesterday and this morning, a lot of initiatives are being prepared, but linking and interlinking those initiatives is key. So let's not plan and develop in planned isolation, but see how interportability can be supported, and data and output and input from different systems can be exchangeable. This is on one hand, and when it comes to another part of this digitalization, some ports already have systems, but they are outdated, and shifting to new systems, modern systems, is a challenge. And this is for them, breaking down what they have is difficult, and what is a good modern system is also a challenge. So this technical issue is there, and I think all the parties who are working on tools, models, it all comes down to the quality of data. The quality of data is very important, otherwise rubbish in, rubbish out. So the emphasis is the data quality, and consistency is very important from the technical point of view. With regard to this issue, colleagues from Pro Danube, how will this master plan address the challenge of outdated technology to facilitate integration of modern digital tools? Is that foreseen in the master plan?
Yes, sorry. Here we also would like to address a gradual, a stepwise approach. So although it would have been very easy to say in one sentence, purchase the best and most expensive equipment and software, and then you will run 100% perfectly. But it's quite clear that it's not the way forward. So, or it's a potential way forward, but a more realistic would be a stepwise gradual implementation and upgrading of the tools, what you already have. You might need to change some, you might just need to update some of those, but it has to be most probably and most definitely, it has to be tailored to the port or the group of ports which cooperate together. So here there will be a proposal or recommendations also for gradual stepwise upgrading and updating your solutions.
Thank you. Then the last but not least, the human resource part. I will ask the question, who is facing shortage of skilled personnel? Please raise your hand. Yeah, it's a common issue, and especially for ports. Now that the scope is broadened, the responsibility is broadened, and the knowledge is broadened also that is required. So this is seen as a big issue. There is willingness, perhaps there is also budget, but if you don't have the skilled personnel, then you cannot go forward. And then these skilled personnel need some training, need some education, whether it's on legislative issues on how this is being settled, or technical solutions, what is there, what is future-proof, etc. And as always, there is always a resistance for change also in port. So personnel is facing this kind of, why should we? No one is paying for it. Has already worked for years like this. Why should we, etc. So these are the key gaps and barriers identified from the human resource part. Then the question to our colleagues, how will the master plan address training needs of ports staff for these digital tools of the future?
Here we were also a bit surprised, so to say, if I might say so, that despite all of us is using digital tools, but when it comes, or at least on the private level, but when it comes to the business everyday work, resistance, as you just mentioned, was experienced on our side as well. So our idea or our input for the recommendations will be to definitely go for some structured programs for your staff who shall and might use digital tools. You might have colleagues who need basic trainings. You might need programs or sign up for some courses where you involve them and where you present and teach them interactively how to use even more sophisticated tools. So here as well, tailor-made programs, structured courses or online or physical courses for your colleagues will be necessary, and hopefully via the direct involvement of those colleagues, this resistance can also be decreased, and they will see the digitalization as enablers for their works.
Thank you, Robert. Then I would like to close with actually framing these gaps and barriers. The list is quite negative. Luckily, it's not all the ports are facing all these barriers. So there is hope, and there is willingness, especially. So with the right support, we can make a difference. Thank you.
Yes, thanks, team, the digital team. I think Marta wanted to comment. So go ahead, Marta.
Thank you for this interesting, presentation. It's always good to know what we are lacking. Just to maybe remind those of you who are interested that we have the call open under CEF, and this there is a topic specifically dedicated to inland navigation, especially to the risk. But it, the title may be a little bit misleading because it also covers port community systems. So if there are ports and other bodies interested and eligible, still they have time to apply. The deadline for submission is 26th of January, 25th, yes, like end of January. So thank you.
The floor is back to you, colleagues from Pro Danube.
Thank you very much. And using the remaining 8 minutes, we would like to further dive into the digitalization master plan, which is going to be the main takeaway of our journey of the past 2 years, I think, in the project. So we have already touched upon several elements, and we will come up with this document at the end of the year, which will include a vision, guidelines, and using all those elements what Charlotte has presented, desk research, the work on the gaps and barriers, interviews, those variety of inputs, which will also materialize in a self-assessment tool. I will not read out the vision statement, what we have formulated after this excessive work, but definitely some keywords are highlighted that the inland ports will be or are. When talking about vision, I can read it like are transformed into smart and interconnected sustainable logistics hubs. I think this is a very broad element, but being a vision, it defines or it can define the next steps in line with the well-known European Green Deal, sustainable and smart mobility strategy elements. And we deem that maybe the last sentence of this vision statement is the most important. Collaboration with all the relevant stakeholders and related data sharing facilities is utmost important. Maybe this is also a sentence which we have discussed several times in the past years, but with this work in the past 2 years, we can show that it's possible. That's what I said also last afternoon when listening to the good practices in multimodality. So there are examples. This is what we have collected, and it shows that it's possible. So as a next step, I will be very fast with the strategy for inland ports, which we will work out based on all these. will absorb elements of the parallel projects and initiatives, and we will work that out in a stepwise approach, or in a let's say building blocks approach, using all those experiences, let it be good or bad experiences, but learnings definitely from projects, initiatives of individual ports without funding, based on own resources, policy documents, and all what we have done so far and collected so far. This is what we have transformed into this vision statement, which you will be able to read in its whole extent on the website later on in the presentation and in the deliverables. But definitely there are 4 key elements what need to be there and applied to make digitalization come to a next level. Having the proper technology at your hands, having the stakeholders, interoperable stakeholders and their interoperability and interaction together, so engagement of the stakeholders. And as this project is mostly focusing on greening, so we definitely have to identify and make recommendations how to use digitalization in this case to enable more sustainable, more green operations than right now. And last but not least, intermodality, multimodality, we discussed also in the other relation, but digitalization is a key element, if not the key element nowadays, to connect the different modes of transport and make, for example, if I might use the word, synchromodal logistics chains. And all this will build up into the strategy, which also come with a general roadmap and action plan, which might be tailored when taken up by a selected port or group of ports. When it comes to where do we stand and what are the different levels to digitalization and how to move forward, key element, essential element will be a self-assessment tool, which is also developed in the recent months. We have identified several levels of digitalization, from the minimal or not even using digital so far, up to the highest level, which is combining several latest technology, state-of-the-art technology elements, and in between there are definitely several levels which can include that you are already using digital tools, you are already using it with connected to other stakeholders, and with a very high level of connection and collaboration with other stakeholders. We used as a basis a very nice model of our Swedish colleagues, how this can build up. I will not go too much into the details in this, already mentioned in the gaps and barriers discussion, that definitely we need to go step by step, level by level. It might not make sense to come from a minimal to a very high level digitalization in one step. It could just increase maybe also the resistance of your colleagues. And diving into a practical tool again, it's a preview made deliberately unreadable right now because we do not want to spend too much time on these questions reading them out, but we have collected and grouped 5 questions for your own self-assessment, defining or categorized into the 5 levels. You will be able to access this in a digital format, obviously, from the project website later on in November. Happy to have your feedback on that. And to use the remaining few minutes, we wanted to test some of the questions on the Mentimeter with you, how understandable and how we are, what is the status right now in the room and among the approximately 30 online participants. We would like to encourage the colleagues who are from ports or who can set themselves being a port representative to use the following QR code or the menti.com website. Smartphones shall be able to connect you directly to our questions, which Charlotte will start in a moment. Yep, pictures are taken. And I see that most of you might have already the access. So the first question is, does your port implement AI, blockchain, Internet of Things for advanced solutions? Please select one of the 5 questions. Answers, yes. Coming close to the end of the session. Thank you. Okay. Answers already coming in, which I need to say that it's very good level and good surprise, if I might say so, because obviously this question relates to the highest level of digitalization, but it's good to see that that ports around this table are already on quite high level. If we go to the next question very quickly, we go back a bit. Does your port use digital invoicing systems for managing payments and billings? Huh? Okay, so this is also quite a used part of digital solutions. We will put together these answers and analyze them further in their due position. If we go to the next one, do you use any software for digital calculation of tariffs, fees, and service charges? Mm-hmm. Cool. Thank you. I would say that we could switch to the next one. And maybe the last one for this session. We are talking about automation. Has your port partially digitalized automation of your administrative tasks without digitalization of the port infrastructure? Complex question. Okay, so here, as expected, this is quite a range of answers, but the middle one, so the moderate or partial implementation takes the lead. I think this is what is really reflecting the status, and I would say that we thank you very much for your active involvement in this. Thank you very much for your attention for our part of the presentation. Charlotte, Sasha, Khalid, and myself, thank you, and I give the floor back to you.
Yeah, thanks everyone for indeed very active participation on both ends, on the greening and digitalization part. We're still relatively well in time, so I would like to almost complete. Maybe one last note. I think on digitalization, yes, indeed, these barriers, they are there, they are real. But I think we should be aware that the digitalization also provides solutions, whether that's in a variety of fields, whether that's on port management information systems, or whether that's on the risk or digital flows, data flows, or whether it's on something like introducing e-tools for people on board vessels, such as digital service record books or logbooks. So there is no denying it. This digitalization is ongoing, and for inland navigation to be an important player within the whole logistic chain, there's really, in my opinion, not an option. We should all be part of this, and we are all doing this. And I think, and that's the intention, that's my message, the master plan within the project as developed, or the self-assessment tool provides hopefully assistance in your endeavors towards digitalization. So having said so, thanks everyone. Let's have some coffee and be back at
11:10.
11:10 sharp.
Coffee
Thanks,
break
everyone.
is served outside, and please also use the time to study our poster exhibition around at the back of the meeting room. 11:10. Thank you, Ed.
Thanks.
Thank you for the bell. Let's start with the last session, session 4, which is designed as a panel discussion, also involving the SYNERGETICS project with some first presentation type of inputs, and then a moderated panel discussion by Mr. Zeitz for the next approximately 2 hours. I think in the past 1.5 days, it's proven how these 3 projects, the GRIP, the MultiRELOAD, and SYNERGETICS work together. I was very happy. We were very happy with the previous session, where we really tried to take all those initiatives which might seem parallel, but that's the reason why we put it together, that the projects cooperate, and then we go further together and in collaboration and coordination. This session brings in the aspects from the vessel side, from the vehicle side, and also the aspects from the river cruising industry. And without further delay, I give the floor over to Manfred to moderate session 4. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Robert. It's a pleasure to be the moderator of this session. This session 4 shall bring a reality check for strategies, measures, and instruments, and a reality check in the end towards how can the net zero greenhouse gas emission target and the interim targets be achieved in the Danube ports. So that's all about in the end. And when we look into the CO2 and the greenhouse gas emission portfolio of a port, we have several sources of emissions. One source of emissions for sure are the inland vessels in the port. In some ports they are dominant, some others they are rather small. It depends also on the function and the modal split of the transport modes in the port. It depends also on the industrial activities of the port. But we have the opportunity to have one EU-funded project among us, which is essential also for greening the European inland fleet. So this is the SYNERGETIC project. And the SYNERGETIC project is also very important because when we assume that we have roughly 12,000 vessels, which have to turn net zero in 2050. So 12,000 vessels, when we would like to rebuild them, that would take quite some time. So the capacity of the European shipyards is around 100 vessels, most likely per year, I was told. If it is, we have at the maximum 50, 60 vessels per year newly built coming. So we are talking about rebuilding the European fleet at the same rate, but it would take something between 150 and 200 years. So that's why we need also to think about to retrofit the existing vessels, because they also have a value. So this is a subject. This is the subject for the SYNERGETIC project. So please, Benjamin Fredorf from DSD, the coordinator of the project, give us a short overview. Where are we in greening and retrofitting the European fleet? What is the project finding? What is the project's contribution? Please.
All right. Thank you, Manfred, for the introduction and already mentioning the most important parts. I remember the phrase SYNERGETICS is a very important project, enough said. But I will talk you briefly through our vision, and then afterwards the colleagues will dive into a bit more details on some parts of the project. So I don't have to click here, but on the presenter. Some background information on the project. The project title is Synergies, and that's what it's all about, for the green transformation of inland and coastal shipping. And it kicked off in the beginning of last year and will run until the mid of 2026. Important to know, it's an innovation action, so there's not too much focus on research, but we try to be close to the market and make our impact on the implementation and the actual greening of the existing fleet. The project replies to the call for proposals, which is mentioned here, where highlighted some items in green, which are, of course, our guidelines for the implementation and, of course, also for writing the proposal and setting up the project. So it's about demonstration of retrofitting solutions for both seagoing and inland navigation vessels. The ambition is to demonstrate solutions capable of greenhouse gas emission reduction of at least 35% compared to the original design. So it's about short-term actions. It's not about the new builds, total zero emission solution, etc. It's about the low-hanging fruits. It also includes climate neutral fuels, but the call actually states that it should go beyond to pure drop-in fuels. That will also be seen in the coming slides. And we are establishing, as requested by the call, an up-to-date catalog of suitable solutions. So this is a slide showing the consortium of the project. We have in total 18 partners. 2 of them are associated partners from UK and Switzerland. And I have the honor to coordinate on behalf of our company DST. So this chart is showing our project structure with the 5 most relevant work packages, starting from an exploration work package 1, synchronization work package, our demonstrators, then the integration of all these developments, and work package dedicated to the acceleration and impact of the project. I will talk through very briefly some of these work packages. Hopefully I don't have the time, so I will speed through. Hopefully I will, but not only hopefully trigger some confusion, but also some interest and trigger some questions, not only for the panel discussion, but also for networking and using synergies afterwards. So this is a slide with a very brief output example from our well-to-tank pathways, where our colleagues from Switzerland are leading, where you see predictions, and so it's just the well-to-tank perspectives. Usually we all tend to focus on the tank-to-wake emissions with zero emission technologies, and here we see that there's no real zero emission when you take into account the upstream emissions. We don't have the time to dive deep, but key takeaways is here that our hydrogen from wind energy and also from photovoltaics have some upstream emissions. Green methanol is starting with a not really great environmental footprint today, but there's a lot of room for improvement also predicted for the upcoming decades. So I will skip here work package 2, which is about our pilot database. I invite you to check our website, where we have extensive database of the survey of existing and upcoming pilots. I presented this exactly 3 weeks ago in the same room here, so I skipped this today. Here, few slides on our work page 3, our own demonstrators with CMB Tech, our UK partner. We look into hydrogen in internal combustion engines, dual fuel engines here. We look into several applications of methanol usage in dual fuel or monofuel with the ignition improver in combustion engines. We look into the electrification of the main propulsion plant, also the pure battery electric with swappable batteries. We will hear more about this in a few minutes presented by Esther. Then we have our so-called model scale demonstrators. We will also hear more about the one on the right-hand side, the pusher of Via Donau. And on the left-hand side, we are coming back to our core of DST, the focus on the hydrodynamics. Here we discuss the potential of greening by aft-chip replacement. In Germany, we have a state aid scheme with subsidies for this aft-chip replacement. Here's some background information of our use case vessels. About a vessel, in this case, 50 years old, has seen a lot of changes and retrofits over the last decades, but now we are discussing the maximum retrofitting measure, the aft-chip replacement. For this, we studied the operational profile. The vessel has an installed capacity of more than 1 megawatt, and in the operational profile, the onboard monitoring, we identified that they more or less never use 50% of the installed battery capacity. So this also offers a significant potential for greening by right sizing and also for hybrid drivetrains, etc. We built the model, did what we do best at a towing tank facility, tested it as for the baseline test. Now we are looking into the optimization potential. Here we see some results for different load cases and different water depth, because it's doesn't make sense to optimize a vessel for trial conditions at deep water, which will hardly be ever seen again during real-life operation of the vessel. Then we do fancy CFD, parametric hull form optimization, and just as a teaser, it will be presented in much more detail next week in our midterm conference in Brussels, next Tuesday. We have, by keeping the same displacement, just changing some details of the hull, we have a potential for reduction in power demand and to save kilowatt hours, also for the green energy converters and alternative fuels by conservatively more than 15%. We have the system demonstrators. Here on the left-hand side, we see our work from our partner Scandinavian with the internal combustion engine using methanol. In this case, the compression ignited methanol engine using pure methanol with an ignition improver, but we also look into the dual fuel applications. We have future-proof shipping with fuel cell drivetrains also in the consortium. And we are developing a couple of tools. We are now skipping or moving to the next work package. Our ambition is, because with this consortium, we know we have done the same exercise as requested by the call several times in several consortia over the last decades. And of course, sometimes it gets a bit frustrating that some results are lost at the end of the project, and we want to have a lasting structure. That's why we have the idea to base all our outputs on IT catalog database structure behind, and all our outputs like technology fact sheets. I also presented them 3 weeks ago here, and they will be in the focus next week again. Our decision support tools, etc., all will retrieve their information, figures, data from this database, which we will hopefully manage in upcoming projects to keep up to date and to create a lasting instrument and a set of instruments for vessel owners, policymakers, etc. So this is in brief the vision of SYNERGETICS. I'm looking forward to discussion in the panel and afterwards. Please contact us. Our contact details are here, and hopefully in the end we will not only have dense traffic on the Rhine and on the Danube, but also with greening implemented in the existing fleet without waiting for the new builds. That's it. I think we can directly move on.
Thank you very much, Benjamin. Please continue.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Today, I would like to present you what we are currently busy with within the Synergetic project. I would like to spend a few minutes describing a little bit the context and the design approach we are currently using. And then I would like to show you some results that we have had in designing a sustainable power and energy system for the Via Donau push boat. So starting from the context, this has been mentioned quite a few times in these days, but if we look at the European path from today to 2050, we can say that our sector is facing quite some challenging times, and the goal is to get to climate neutrality by 2050. And to do so, we need to implement on board of our ships new technologies. And as you can see from the slide, at least on paper, there seem to be quite some options out there, but it's not very clear. Yeah, for this reason, as designers, we always want to be able to answer to the following question. So we want to be able to verify at an early design stage if what we are currently designing actually meets the requirement. And this is very important, especially for these new technologies in which we cannot rely only anymore on the experience and the engineering gut feeling. But we want to avoid mistakes, and especially we want to avoid finding out mistakes very late in the design process, so that we can so that we have to make very costly changes later on. For this reason, it might be interesting to also change the approach we have to the design. You might be familiar with the V model, which is more traditional. This is the W model, which is similar to the V model, but has some additions. So, like in the V model, we tend to start from defining requirements and understanding what are the operations of the vessel, and then before stepping into the concept design. But then before jumping into the physical realization, the integration, the engineering, and buying things, which is the very right part of the W model, we add an extra step, which is the virtual model cycle. This is not digital twinning, it's something else, but it's a way of using simulations to better understand at an early design stage if we are on the right track and if our design actually meets requirements, but also to enrich our requirements to better understand how systems behave together and to define better specification of our systems and components. So this is the approach that we are currently using for the demo 6 of Synergetics, which is a push boat operating on the Austrian Danube River. Today I will mostly present results that are still on the concept design phase, so at the very left part of the W model. And yeah, this is what I was mentioning about the virtual cycle model. And then step into the demo. This is the push boat. It has certain capabilities, so it has to perform waterway marking, bathymetric survey, and do maintenance of the Danube River after extreme events. And currently, the vessel is sailing on HVO, and the goal is to explore alternative solutions and to get as close as possible to climate neutrality. So we started by defining requirements. So we typically ask to stakeholders and users, how do they use the ship, what it is needed from the ship. And then we start analyzing what the ship does. And we do this through interviews, speaking with perhaps the users and collecting data. For the operations in this case, we collected GPS data together with Via Donau. And we were able to define the environmental conditions that the vessel typically sails into. After that, we performed some power prediction to understand what are the typical power demands of the vessel. And then we define tasks that the vessel has to perform. And a sequence of tasks is actually defining different operational profiles, each one for the capabilities we saw in the previous slide. This is just, let's say, a screenshot of a power speed prediction. You can see that you have different curves depending on the water depth and if the vessel is pushing or not pushing the barge. And then we define what is the most critical operations in terms of energy. That is very crucial when you have to define the total amount of capacity you want to be able to store on board. And this is the maintenance of the Danube River after an extreme event, which consists of about 700 kilometers for 100 hours of continuous operation and a total energy of 15 megawatt hours. What I want to mention is that this is the, as we said, most critical operation, but might not be the most frequent operation. That's very different because you might want to optimize your system on what is the most frequent operation that the vessel does, but you also want to be able to perform the most critical one, of course. Then we wanted to explore different alternatives. If you recall, one of the first slides I showed you, like that spaghetti diagram, it's rather complicated, and we want to be able to explore and assess very early design phase what are the possibilities, and already, if possible, assess the impact on the design. So we considered criteria like system volume, system weight, efficiency, total fuel consumption, and these kind of aspects of different solutions. And by solution, I mean the fuel, so the energy carrier plus the energy conversion system. And we did a first iteration in which we compared fuels and solutions like, of course, the more traditional diesel one, which is used as a benchmark, to, for example, full battery electric system and compressed hydrogen with fuel cells. And you can see this is just a comparison between the volume of the different systems. And as we were talking about retrofits, it is very important to have an idea of the impact of these solutions on the vessel. And you can see that the battery electric and the compressed hydrogens are simply too big to be able to install them, integrate them on the current reference vessel. So we did a second iteration after discussing with the owner, with Viadona, to explore further methanol solution. And here you can see different types of methanol solution, because methanol can also be different things. So you can have a more conservative dual fuel solution, so 65-35 in energy in volume share, up to single fuel, so 100% methanol. And of course, you can see that the more diesel you have on board, the less volume you need. But also, this has an impact on the performance regarding emissions. So you can see that, in theory, the more methanol you have on board, the better you perform in terms of emission. And these are grams of CO2 equivalent, wall to wake. But it's also very important to highlight the source of methanol. So if you, for example, use methanol from fossil resources, you are actually doing worse than running on diesel. So that's also a very important aspect when we think about supply chain and scalability of the fuel. And so this was the overview and the next steps. So we wanted to also investigate different type of propulsion architectures, that's how we call them. So compare a direct propulsion, which is what the vessel has now, together with a methanol electric propulsion, so going towards electrification. Then we want to do a quantitative and qualitative comparison between single fuel and dual fuel solution. And this is also dictated by what the market has to offer now. That's what we see. It's a little bit of a bottleneck now, especially for some ranges in power, that there are not many solutions ready to implement on board. And then we want to finalize the concept design, so to select and size the different components and arrange them on board. This is it. And thank you all for listening.
Thank you very much. Other questions to Benjamin and Gianluca for immediately with regard to the presentations? If not, then I would like to continue with Esther Bustrak from Zero Emission Services.
Thank you. I am going to share my screen with you. Please let me know if you do see it.
Yes, we can see.
Yeah.
Please
okay.
Go ahead.
Good. Thanks for having me. My name is Esther Bustrak. I work for Zero Emission Services. We are part of the SYNERGETICS project as well. I'm taking over from my colleague Lucas, who is on holiday, but he's involved on a day-to-day basis in the SYNERGETICS project. We are a Dutch-based company founded in 2020. And we aim to power clean corridors, which is supposedly a main topic of today. Well, we are all aware of, let me go to the next slide, which is not working. Yeah, why sustainability is necessary. There is 12,000 inland vessels, which altogether produce lots of emissions, carbon dioxide, nitrogen, sulfur, particulate matter, and we have longer term and shorter term policy goals, and we aim to be climate neutral in 2050 altogether. We aim to make the inland shipping sector 100% emission free. And by doing that, we have developed a all-in-one energy concepts for emission free sailing that basically contains of 3 pillars. And the first one is the exchangeable energy container, or what we also call a battery, in a containerized battery, or a ZESPAC, which is the name we gave for it. This is a battery with the capacity of 2.9 megawatt hour currently. This is the first battery was 2.2 megawatt hour. Second generation is 2.9 megawatt hour, and the batteries are evolving rather quickly. Batteries can be charged with 1 megawatt and discharged with 1 megawatt, and they can be used to power inland vessels with an electrical drivetrain. Once depleted, the shipper goes to a charging station. We are developing them in the Netherlands and a little bit outside of them in inland ports. Once depleted, leaves the empty battery, gets a fully charged battery and can keep on sailing. Currently, a ship can sail between 60 to 90 kilometers with one battery, based on or depends a little bit on the size of the ship, the weight of the load, whether the vessel is sailing on a river or a canal, upstream or downstream, etc. And shippers or operators are paying for this technology per use. So we have a pay-per-use business model, which means that the vessel owner does not need to invest in a battery or in charging infrastructure. That is what we do. And we basically rent the batteries to the ship owners. So they pay for the amount of time that they have the battery on board, to encourage them to bring back the battery as soon as possible. And obviously they pay for the electricity consumed. In 2021, first vessel started sailing between Alphen aan de Rijn and Moerdijk. This is a one-way trip of about 60 kilometers. This is a 90-meter ship, which already had a hybrid engine. You see the batteries on the photo. They are on the top of the ship, here on the ship, on the bottom, 2 ZESPACs. Currently, this ship uses 2 batteries to sail from Alphen aan de Rijn to Moerdijk and back. Obviously, once we have established a charging station in Moerdijk, the ship will only take 1 battery to go to Moerdijk, leave the depleted one there, pick up a new one, and go back to Alphen aan de Rijn. The charging stations, we develop them in inland terminals in the Netherlands. On the top left corner, you see the charging stations. It consists out of 2 30-foot containers with transformators and with inverters. And the 2 green batteries on the 2 green containers on the foreground are the batteries. You see on the bottom left corner the footprint that this charging station takes on a terminal. It's rather small on an inland terminal. It's about 250 square meter. One charging station needs obviously a rather big grid connection of at least 2 MVA, which allows the batteries to be charged in 3 hours. They can be charged and discharged with 1 megawatt. And on one charging station, there is space for 2 batteries. If there is more battery capacity needed, this whole installation can be duplicated or triplicated to increase the capacity. Batteries are heavy, they weigh 30 tons. That's why we need either a reach decker or a crane, or sometimes both, depending on the terminal, to transport the battery from the charging station to the vessel and vice versa. In the Netherlands, we have one of those docking stations is live and 2 are about to go live. We are currently in the testing process. That is in Alblasserdam and in 's-Hertogenbosch. And on the back of that, we are in the phase of developing quite a bit more, which are going live first half of 2025. Next to that, we're looking into developing charging stations across other main waterways in the Netherlands and also outside of the Netherlands, because one of the most busy routes in Europe for inland vessel transport is obviously the route between Rotterdam in the Netherlands and Antwerp in Belgium, and between Rotterdam and Duisburg in Germany. Yeah, so this is basically what we've identified as the main waterways, and we can only make them emission free if there is a network of charging stations. And that is why before we focus on vessels, we aim to develop first the network of charging stations. This is what it is in the system change. You also saw this in the movement towards electric driving. No one wants to drive electric if there is no infrastructure. So that's why the current focus is on the infrastructure. These charging stations can not only be used to charge batteries to power emission-free sailing. Obviously, we look at this from a little bit of a broader perspective. We look at a charging station from an electricity hub point of view. We can connect the charging infrastructure to locally produced energy, renewables, so solar and wind power, which means that the batteries can, if there is sufficient renewables available, be charged fully with green energy. We can store that energy. We can use it to deliver it back to the terminal or to the logistic location at a later moment, or we can use it for other purposes, such as the charging of e-equipment, e-trucks, e-reach deckers, or for mobile shore power installations, or anything else that is required by the terminal. We look at this from a terminal to terminal perspective, and based on the terminal needs, we can provide for it with this charging station and the batteries. Well, which vessels are more or less fit to sail with batteries? The drivetrain is obviously a huge topic, because existing vessels with a conventional drivetrain cannot sail on batteries. New vessels almost always equipped with an electric drivetrain. However, as was already mentioned earlier, we cannot wait for the entire EU vessel, for all the vessels to be rebuilt. That will take way too long. That is why we look at retrofit as well. This is quite cost intensive, installing a new engine. But there are subsidies available, and once in a while a vessel needs a new engine anyway, and at that moment we try to encourage the vessel owners to install a electric drivetrain. For battery electric sailing, the operational profile is key. Mainly as long as there is not yet a fully equipped network of charging infrastructure. We currently look at vessels which have a point-to-point sailing route, which means that they sail from A to B and from B to A daily or multiple times a week, because that makes it easy to create locations to swap batteries. And as it turns out, a large part of the vessels actually sails the same route every now and then, which makes inland vessels, especially container vessels, very well equipped for battery electric sailing. Also, the cargo type is of importance. With this concept, battery in a container, the first focus is obviously container vessels. However, we're also looking at dry bulk vessels on which a battery can be installed rather easily. Tanker ships and wet bulk is a little bit more difficult, but is a separate space needs to be created for the battery. Makes that the ship can take a little bit less cargo, and also that the retrofit is a bit more expensive. But from a technical point of view, this is very well possible. It's just the operational challenges that needs to be overcome. And thirdly, vessel size. At this moment, with the current batteries, with the current capacity of the batteries, the vessel should not be too small, because then the battery is too heavy, but also the vessel should not be too big, because then the electricity consumption is too high for what the battery can provide. So currently, we look at vessels from about 85 to 135 meters. Well, that was it in a nutshell, what we do. I will be available throughout this session. I need to leave a little bit earlier, but if there is any other questions that cannot be
Thank
asked,
you very much, Esther.
send me an email.
Are there questions to Esther? Yes, please. Johan Schweighofer from Via Donau.
Thank you very much. One question, it relates to the pay-per-use principle. What are the indicative costs associated with the usage of one battery container comprising 2 to 2.9 megawatt hours?
I cannot give you a price because we calculate this based on the electricity consumption on the vessel, on the sailing route. There are many factors influencing the price. So this is a case-by-case calculation, a case-by-case price. Also because we want to be competitive with diesel. So it's not a satisfying answer, but I cannot give you any price.
Well, Esther, you cannot see it most likely, but you doesn't seem to be very happy with your answer. Yeah, that's for sure. Herfried.
No. Hello, Esther. This is Herfried Leitner from the TTS group. No, the answer was not satisfying. So I'm taking after you one more time. So question is, what is the total cost of ownership then at the end to the owners?
To the owners, yeah. We look at it from a
that's the only thing what counts at the end, right? I mean, if we're thinking about that an industry has to be transformed, right? I mean, it's total cost of ownership.
Yeah.
That you might have calculated already with the Alpha now, right?
Yeah, we have calculated this already with the Alphanar, indeed. And the total cost of ownership, I'm also going to give you it depends answer once again, because it mainly depends on whether the vessel already has a electric drivetrain or a conventional drivetrain. And whether the client of the vessel is also willing to pay. It depends on the ownership of the vessel, whether this cost needs to be taken into account or not. But we look at it from the total cost of ownership perspective, 10 to 15 years. And we do take into consideration, we make a comparison between electric sailing and between sailing on diesel. And then we do take into consideration that there is going to be a tax on CO2 eventually. But I don't have the exact total cost of ownership numbers or the prices here with me, but it can be shared in the Synergetic project afterwards, obviously.
Well, thank you very much. I have to look a bit on the timeline. And I would like to draw your attention that questions like this, what we have here now, they are in the focus on the Platina for Action stage event, which will take place on the 6th of November in Brussels, in the Square Convention Center. And there we will have a dedicated session where also, I think Tess has already agreed to be there. So this is then the place to really talk about the zero emission technologies, the total cost of ownership, and how realistic is it to get them at what magnitude into operation. Well, thank you once again, Esther. Let me now look into, let's say, the next speaker on the panel. It is Sasha Gill from the European River Cruise Association. River cruise is an booming sector, I dare to say, despite the problems the sector faced in the COVID times. That's clear. But it is an amazingly recovery, what we see at least on the Danube. More than 190 vessels on the Danube, river cruise vessels, several hundred thousands of people, so increasing numbers. And the question is to you, Sasha, how is the river cruise industry preparing for getting net zero emission? Please, Sasha, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. And yes, the sector is booming. That's absolutely correct. But I do want to come back to one of the last questions, and I think that was the perfect segue. What's the total cost of ownership That's also our question when it comes to decarbonization. And specifically for that reason, we launched a survey approximately a year ago, where we looked at what are the business cases for the different types of fuels and technologies available. And that's what I would like to present in the next 10 minutes to lead you through on how did we work on that research as well. What are some of the technologies that we're looking at on actually decarbonizing in the different areas in Europe as well, and making sure that we reach the 2030 and 2050 goals as well. So let's have a look at the presentation here. The first challenge that we wanted to answer here is very simply, we're saying here we need a proof of concept. What's a proof of concept is basically, we need to basically align in the sector, and I'm specifically talking here now about the cruise sector, ocean and river, really aligning in the sector on what technologies are available, what are the sailing areas that we serve as well, what are the ports that we serve as well, and what are some of the fuels that we would like to focus on. And that's where we're working on a proof of concept to really align and make sure that we cover every single cruise ship and every destination that we visit. How did we start with this? You know that slide, you know that setup here. That's basically the European Green Deal here. And we started with the philosophy, which clearly says the next industrial revolution is driven by policy and not technology. And if you consider this, if you consider that saying as well, and if you look at the policies that are coming towards us, one has to understand that every policy that is on that slide here as well also has a funding program attached to it in one or another way. It might be on the way that you're saying there's a tax attached to it as well, but it might be on the other side as well, there's a very clear funding program attached to it as well. So this is where our business case starts, and that's where we said we need to look at the policies available, and we need to look at the funding programs available for these policies as well, and then map out Europe, our sailing areas, our ships as well, and very clearly identify where can we build a business case. Because if there is no business case, there is no investment, there is no cruising. It's very simple. How did we start it? We basically, as you can see here, we took the map of Europe, and we looked here at the 5 different bullet points that you can see here. So we tried to really search on what are the types of molecules or electrons that we can actually use in the cruise sector. What is it that we can use in the different locations? And that brings me to the second bullet point here. We looked at the different river stretches that we serve as well. And we looked at each individual country, river stretch and program that's running in that country as well to identify the correct molecule or electron that works for a river cruise vessel. Next, we looked at the number of ships and the stretches. And again, remember, we looked at river cruising, but also ocean cruising. So we looked at both sectors also to see if there are synergies specifically at ocean/cruise, river cruise ports as well. Then we looked at the bunkering infrastructure, also looking at the inland waterways deep into the Danube as well, and all the way down the Rhine towards Basel as well. And of course, the port infrastructure that's available. And that really gives us our sort of proof of concept on the GHG reduction and scaling potential for river. How does that work? A couple of numbers towards it. So if I click further here, what are the sort of findings? First of all, our findings, and again, I go back to my saying earlier, driven by policy, not technology. We believe there are timely solutions. That's what we believe. The challenge is the business case, not the technology for us. What does that look like? So if you look generally, I'm going to look at the next numbers only at river cruise vessels on the Rhine and on the Danube. And there we're looking at approximately 380 vessels. Just as a comparison, if you look at ocean cruising, we're looking at ocean cruising approximately at about 400 passenger vessels. I'm talking about cruise vessels. I'm not talking about day vessels. We're talking about 13.5 million passengers that we transport in Europe. We're looking at a fuel consumption about 240,000 tons. And as you can see here, you can see the average cruise length as well, the key ports and destinations as well. So we also try to identify which ones are ports where most of our vessels actually serve, and which are ports that would be ideal for us for bunkering infrastructure as well, for refueling as well, and basically for the logistics setup as well. That was the base of the research. The research was done by Ricardo, which is a British institution, and by DNV as well, which is a Norwegian classification society, DNVGL, so you've got Germany and Norway in there. And that's just because we self-funded it, and that's why we looked at different institutions that we can use for that. We spent approximately €500,000 on the research. What was the outset? It's an industry research, so it's a non-funded research. And in the research, what we found is that when you look specifically at river cruise and ocean cruise vessels, the commercial readiness in this sector is rather high. Why is it rather high? Because we're not looking at decarbonizing today. We're looking at decarbonizing between 25 and 2035. That's about the timeline. So we really look at the next 10 years. And if you look at the heat map that you can see in front of you, you've got the different sort of options available there. The typical options from battery electric, including OPS, of course. Then you look at hydrogen, methanol, and the several biofuels, the molecules as well. If you look at the technologies, as you can see them here on the heat map as well, you can see the further we get into 2035, the greener the heat map becomes. And that's really what we're looking at. So we're not saying that, okay, today we cannot decarbonize. That's not really the aim, because anyway, if we wanted to decarbonize today, we wouldn't have the business case for it. But if you look at decarbonizing 2030 and 2035, the story becomes completely different. And that's what we're aiming for. So if you look at the setup here, we know that technology readiness will be achieved at the level where we can reach it in 2035. And we now need to start matching the fuel availability in the different ports to it. Now, what does that look like? Again, I'm going to go back into Europe as a map. In the river cruise industry, we're not looking at a single fuel solution. So again, if we look at fossil fuels today, they are extremely efficient, both in terms of infrastructure deployment as well, and of course, the mileage you can sail with it. If we look into the future, we need to look at different fuels, also from a price component, but also into different fuels because of the mileage that we sail as such. So if you look at the map here, you can see here, we're really saying we need to be rather fuel diagnostics, and we need to look at pockets on where we deploy that fuel as well. So if you look at this here, and I'm going to build in a little bit the ocean cruise sector here. If you look at river and ocean, you could, for example, say if you have a river cruise vessel that sails in the area around Paris or Bordeaux, for example, just simply because of the cruising areas that you have there and the mileage that you serve, you could most probably go with an electric vessel. However, if we sail from Amsterdam to Budapest, we're talking about a completely different fuel component as such. And that's why we're also looking at, if we take all of our ships in the future, we're splitting them now based on the technology versus the deployment in the different countries as well, versus, and that's important, the funding programs and the infrastructure that's being developed in these countries as well. And that's a very important component. And you can only come to that solution if you actually get it together as a sector. That's the most important part. You need to get it together as a sector. You need to do the research on that as well to really be able to combine these different components. Local funding programs, EU funding programs, local deployment of fuel infrastructure as well, and your need in terms of what you need in terms of fuel quantities. So that brought us very clearly to the solution that it cannot be one fuel. It needs to be several different fuel options that we're going to need to be deployed in the different sailing areas. What does that mean for us in the future? I'm going to take this further here. We started to go into our last phase now, and that phase will be completed by December this year. And we call this the foresight phase. What's the foresight? The foresight is basically where, as a consortium, we basically agree what are the different scenarios that we would like to focus on. And when I say focus on, we're talking about focusing on in terms of the business case. And again, the business case is a collection of funding programs, self-funding as well, availability of fuel as well, and the technology availability. And then really look at what are the different 1, 2, 3 choices that we want to look at. And here we came up with 3 choices that we're working on. And you can see them here. Scenario 1 for us is a liquid drop-in fuel dominates. So again, I'm saying here, if you look at this, this is not from a technology perspective, it's nothing new. It's nothing where you can say this is super innovative, but, and that's the important part, it drives the business case, and that's the most important part. It drives the business case so you can actually decarbonize. So again, scenario number 1, liquid drop-in fuels dominate. What does that mean for us as well in terms of bio and electric-based fuels? What does it cost us as well in the different sailing areas? That's our first scenario. The second scenario that we're working on is electrons dominate. So anything from drivetrain to the batteries as such, the electrons or the battery and hybrid solutions on board the ships. What would that mean as well in terms of cost and deployment? And scenario number 3 is the high momentum for methanol. Also, this is a technology that's applicable for us. And this is where we look at dual fuel or single fuel engines as well, where we say, what would that mean for us in 2030 and 2035 if we would do large deployments, for example, from Amsterdam to Vienna to Budapest and further as well. So these are the 3 scenarios that we are working on. We're currently working on the pricing for the 3 scenarios. And I come back to the initial case on why we started this. Again, we spent about €500,000 on the research, not us alone as the River Cruise Association. We did it together with CLIA as well, with Ricardo, with DNV. And the focus here was really to look at building these scenarios, and from the scenarios, look at how can we actually invest into these scenarios afterwards, and how can we build the business case around it. And that brings me back to the policy again. Again, you've got the Innovation Fund with €40 billion available. Well, it's about 20, which is still available. But there's 40 billion available at the beginning. There were 40 billion available. And when you look at these funding programs need a proof of concept. And the proof of concept at the end of the day is a mix and match between technology, infrastructure, and most importantly, the business case. If the business case is not there, there's no point of actually submitting the application. And that's why, again, for the setup, that's my last slide here, we looked at a consortium approach, which means we looked at the entire river cruise industry plus ocean cruising. I'm looking here at European ocean cruising. And the concept that we are working at now is to focus on the next 10 years. I'm not saying that every vessel is going to be decarbonized in the next 10 years. Absolutely not. That's not what we're saying. But what we're saying is, what can we do in the next 10 years to create the business case as well, to start building the infrastructure as well, implement the technology so that we can, on one side, retrofit, so the current and existing fleet, then replace as well. Let's not forget, there's quite a bit of growth in the industry as well. How can we replace and build new ships as well? And last but not least, how do we need to relocate current ships as well into different stretches, different river stretches, setups as well, so we can actually do the retrofitting or the infrastructure setup in the different rivers as well. That's what we're looking at, and that's what we're working on. And as mentioned, the research is going to be finished by the end of the year. It's a research that's not publicly shared for the simple reason it's industry funded, and it's basically our way forward. But at the end of the day, we really look at the business case and how we can set it up until 2030 and 2035. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. A very comprehensive, concise strategy for greening the river cruise vessels. One might now say that this is easy because you only have 380 vessels. You are maybe 20 companies, something around that. Nevertheless, for example, we also have about 20 companies which are doing on the Danube 75% of the transport volume. So that's why I think from the approach, we can also learn in the cargo sector. And I feel very comfortable with this strategy that you will really be able to contribute to the greenhouse gas emission targets on time, at a relatively short period of time, also with the measurable effect on the 2030 targets. Once again, thank you very much for letting us know. And other questions to Sasha? If not, then I would like to continue with the ports now, also being part of our panel. And we have selected 3 ports, port organizations, to give us a bit of status report where they are in their efforts. And we have chosen 3 ports which have also signed the joint statement for decarbonization of port operations, which we issued in 2022 as part of the expert group of the Danube Commission. This is Eemshaven, and we have here Mr. Werner Auer. Werner Auer is joining us after having a surgery. That's why he is so comfortably in his couch. But thank you very much, Werner, that you participate here. And what is it what you would like to let us know? Where are you on the way to green the Port of Enns? Please, Werner.
Many thanks, Manfred, for the introduction. Greetings to everybody to Budapest. I hope that you can hear me good. 2 weeks ago, I got a new hip, and so I'm on the recovery weeks on the couch fixed. But never mind, I hope that next time in spring, I will come to Budapest in person. Yeah. Greetings to everybody from here, from Austria. Some words about the port. I will now share my screen. Okay.
Yes, we can see.
You can see it. Yeah. Well, only a few words in the beginning. We are in an inland port in Austria, Enshafen, the newest inland port, a really huge port for the Danube. You can read it here, what we are doing. Our credo is public-private partnership to create infrastructure for transshipping and manufacturing companies. To huge business parks are part of our ports. Really a big one, we say, yeah. 350 million square meters, a huge container terminal and infrastructure for everybody, yeah. I would connect to two keywords of Sasha from the presentation before. Two keywords, infrastructure and business case, yeah. This is our credo we are following. We did a lot of development projects the last 5 or 10 years, plus minus, in order to comply what is coming to us. So much challenge it's coming to us. Zero emission is the big cloud in the very, very far future, but we have to do it for today. And as Sasha said, business case is it, yeah? And so we developed a lot of preparation work strategies, and now we are on the way to make really concrete steps, but smaller steps. Yeah? What I will highlight today, only for the introduction for this reality check podium. Currently, we are in the last weeks or months of the Synergy project. This is an Horizon Europe project. We developed further a lot of basic work probably in Dionysos, probably in CEF projects, CEF study projects. Now we are in this synergy project together with a lot of other ports of Europe, seaports mainly, and develop a master plan, or these partners developed a master plan. We are at a small demo port on the inland side in this consortium, and this master plan shall collect first in a very broad approach the umbrella, what is on this big world, on this big European world now available. We hear so much projects, we hear so much approaches, but now we have to come to doing. Yeah, 2030 is approaching tomorrow. Yeah, and we have just do it. And this master plan aligns us in this way. What Manfred said, what we had in this joint statement, in order to get to action. It is not a way of think for the zero emission technology sometime in the future. Nobody knows when. But in order to make strategy, action plan come down and really do it. And this is what we prepared in this Synergy project now. And we are on a very good way in order to make smaller steps, but just do it. Yeah? If you are interested to get more, I will pre-announce in the Danube Commission premises of Manfred, there will be the next Synergy workshop on the 25th of March, where we, with the project partners will present all the details. This is so far my first introduction for today. Okay, back to Manfred.
Thank you very much, Werner. I really appreciate taking the efforts despite of your little handicap now. But the message is really important, which you give. Don't wait for the silver bullet in technology and don't wait for the zero emission technology. Make the first steps now. And I think that is also, really essential. Because if we don't make the first step, we will never achieve any measurable results. Down the river, I would like now to ask, I do that really in the flow of the water, yeah? Not in the table here Robert gave us. Bela.
Yes?
Hungarian Federation of Inland Ports, yeah?
Yes.
You have more than, I think, 36 port operators, port administrations in your organization. You signed up also to joint statement for
May I ask my slides? I have only 4. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, we know you have slides. So please give us your mission statement.
So the first statement is that the shipping make the world go. So it's we have to underline for the political decision makers in one hand, and the next slide I can state that the inland navigation. May I? Okay. Thank you very much. Oh. So the inland navigation is an environmental champion. So we were talking about the green zero emission. My brother sent a very short message that there is no zero emission. So please accept this. Low emission, very near to the zero, but there is no zero emission. This is my message to Brussels as well. So what we did in the past and in the future, that we try to serve the green ports, and we establish shore power facilities. You won't believe this, that on the Hungarian section of the Danube, there are only very few places where the owners are able to take the shore power. And also you won't believe that it's cost horrible lot of money. My friends in Austria send me several solutions, and we try to invest in this respect. In the future, I guess that all the cargo vessels will be able to take, in the majority of the Hungarian Danube ports, the electricity direct from the shore. Of course, I have to add that they are going to pay for this, because it's, in one hand, is a business. On the other hand, this is an imperative things. Also, we need, as several people mentioned before, the cooperation. I call it digital cooperation in between the Danube Main-Rhine region, because several times we are faced that we are using unnecessary fuel and unnecessary speed. At the ocean, for decades, we know the low steaming. You know what does it mean? With the low steaming at the ocean, we can save money. We can save horrible lot of gas oil or bunker. And that's why I guess that on the river, also we can establish a digital platform, on which platform we can use an algorithm for real-time data and coordinate this in order to avoid the waiting time at the river ports as well. Because you know that at the sea, also, this is a problem that the waiting time, anchorage time, and if we know this kind of data directly, even through the AI system or even through the RIS, the Hungarian River Information Service, we can coordinate this kind of movements, saving gas oil consumption and also saving money, because for the owners, the time is money, because the owners try to avoid the waiting and the idling in the ports. You know better than I do that the demurrage is quite a horrible lot of money. I don't know, some of them, might you know that how much does it cost one simple 1,500 deadweight tons cargo vessel on the river? How much does it cost for one day? 1,500 in between 2,000 euro. So some owners are sitting around the table, they know what does it mean. So only one day, of course, this day is a weather working day, so we are not able to control the weather, but we can state in the contract how can we make the lay time with the charterers, with the cargo owners. So these two things, I guess, that is very important on the Hungarian section. Of course, we are involved in several kind of projects. We are following the different kind of possibilities. But as usually I mentioned, the Hungarian river ports badly need water, because without the infrastructure, the Danube, we cannot sail, because we need the 2.5 meters throughout the whole year. And also we need cargo, because I have a bad news, because during this second half of this year on the Hungarian section, the majority of the grain cargo disappeared. I don't know what is the real reason, but the Hungarian river ports usually handle 30–40% the agriculture product, the grain bulk product. And this kind of cargo disappeared. And you know that we have a very good capacity with 8 million tons, 10 million tons in between on yearly basis. The plan for the future, officially, according to the white paper, according to the Hungarian Széchenyi plan, it's 10% in the modal shift. We actually at the 2%, and the modal shift till 2030, so we have 6 years in order to achieve over 20 million. Would you believe that this is impossible? So from 8 million tons, last year we achieved a fantastic 5 million tons in Hungary. So we are going, the trend line is going down. I am not very optimistic in this respect, but of course, the green philosophy is very important, but also very important that we have to have a very stable surrounding in business, in the river, and also in the agriculture business. So thank you very much. And if there is any question, please send me.
Well, thank you very much.
Hesitate.
Thank you, Belak, for your intervention. You didn't tell us much about the strategies and measures, how the Hungarian ports will reduce the greenhouse gas emissions in your intervention, but I will come back to that. We'll torture you on that in the discussion. Don't worry. So following the river, we will come to Belgrade. That's the headquarters of the Port Governance Agency, and I have the pleasure to welcome Vladimir Pavlovic. Also, Port Governance Agency, very active, not only in developing the ports, managing the ports based on an excellent port law. So the port governance has been built up in an excellent way. And the floor is yours.
Thank you, Manfred, very much. It will be very difficult to be optimistic after Bella, but I will try my best. My name is Vladimir Pavlic. I'm the head of General Affairs Center at the Port Government's Agency of Republic of Serbia. And in the next few minutes, I will present you the project initiated by the PGA. It's called Green Ports, like every other ports regarding the greening in our industry. Why did we decide to initiate this project? As you know, Serbia has around 1,000 kilometers navigable waterways. We have two international rivers, Sava and Danube. And according to available data, we are the second country in the Danube region regarding that volume cargo handled. And also regarding the cruising industry, we are the second country regarding the number of passengers and overall cruising activity. On the one hand, this increase in cargo and traffic regarding the cruising industry is good. On the other hand, it's increased the risk regarding the pollution, regarding the potential incidents on the waterways. And finally, the Green Agenda for Western Balkans clearly highlights the role of water transport in energy transition and decarbonization. And we decided to focus the aim of the project in introducing the new technology and clean energy. We divided the project in three segments. The first segment is the monitoring system, which is planned to implement monitoring stations and measurement stations in the port areas and international passenger terminals. The monitoring system is intended to collect the information regarding the water and air quality, potential pollution, and also to gather information regarding the weather conditions. The main aim of this system is to facilitate easy transfer of data between the governmental institution and to give all the shareholders information regarding the weather conditions on the Serbian waterways. The second segment of the project is the OPS, or the onshore power supply. We all know the European regulation mandate infrastructure for the OPS in the near future. So we wanted to jump the train and start to plan and invest in this kind of infrastructure and to follow the rise and increase of the number of cruising vessels in Serbia. The third segment is focused to mitigate the problems of the first two segments. The first two segments are focused on the consumption of energy, and the third part of the project is focused on implementing the solar power plant systems in port areas, primarily contribution to reducing the pressure on the power electric grid, and to increase the share of the renewable energy in Serbia. The most important thing is the financial aspect of this project. It's still under discussions, and once it's all agreed upon, the project will kick off hopefully within the next year. So thank you for your attention. If you have any questions, you are free to ask.
Well, thank you very much, Vladimir. Always inspiring to see the progress of work at the BGA. Our last panelist is Sasha Jovanovic, IC consultant. And Sasha, I think you wrote more than 1,000 pages of studies on Danube ports, coming from the side of infrastructure, accessibility, also matching plans, regional development, matching transport plans with infrastructure development, possibilities of the ports. But you said that you will give us one other thought and some food for thought with regard to the limits, particular for, let's say, digital tools, because we heard also from Sasha, looking too much into technologies, waiting for the right technologies to come. So this might not be the strategy to success. Yeah? You said the revolution will not come from technologies, but from policy. So I took note of that. I will use it in the future, especially when we are talking in Brussels on these issues and with the Parliament people in particular. But Sasha, what is it what you would like to give us as a message?
Thank you, Manfred. Thanks. Well, I have to admit that this question should have come maybe earlier, because all my preceding colleagues already stripped me of the answers that I could give in this respect. But basically, in the work of digitalization in terms of its contribution to greening of port operations, in our case, the what is actually giving the answer to the why digitalization was embedded in the Green Ports project anyway. So basically, I will skip all the details because all of you have already heard about millions of tools that are actually available. But how can the digitalization give its 2 cents into the efforts for the greening of port operations? Well, there are 2 types of effects that digitalization as a process can give us. We're talking about the direct effects and the indirect effects. What are the direct effects? Well, actually, we have a whole myriad of tools, of digital tools that are already on the market, readily available for all of us, that can actually offer us measurement and monitoring of different environmental KPIs that we select. Like whatever IoT sensors for noise, for air quality or water quality, even smart energy management systems. And then, of course, in order to have some use of all these tools that we have discussed about in the last two days, we have to have, in order to avoid also what we call in digitalization, the data silos, meaning accumulation of data without actually using them for something. We have to have also the overarching tool, which actually analyzes all this data and tells us what we can do in terms of our processes that we are doing in a port. So these overarching tools are performing actually the data analytics, which can give us can offer us predictive or prescriptive analytics. Meaning what exactly? That they can suggest us what can happen in case if we do this or that in our operational patterns in the port, or it can even suggest us what to do in order to achieve a certain environmental target that we have imposed upon us in terms of either regulatory requirements or in terms of self-imposed targets that we want to achieve in our ports. In addition to that, as a crown, one of the direct effects is that these tools can even give us the automation of even reporting processes on the selected or imposed environmental KPIs. And the last but not least, the indirect effects of digitalization, how it can contribute to the greening is, to put it in a nutshell, the digitalization itself is all about optimization. In this case, it can be optimization of processes in the ports, of resource allocation, traffic management in ports, route optimization, meaning that as the end result, the digitalization will cause us reduced movements in the ports, meaning reduced energy use, again, meaning less emissions coming from engines, from cargo handling equipment, from all the vehicles that are buzzing around the port. So this would, let's say, give us in turn the lower emissions and the lower overall environmental result of our port operations. So just to put it in a nutshell, these are the effects that digitalization can actually give us, the 2 cents of digitalization in the overall quest for lower emissions in port operations. So that will be it from my side. And if you have any Additional questions? Please don't ask.
No. Thank you very much, Sasha. Always a pleasure to listen to you. And also for putting the digitalization into the right place. Yeah. Also, how can it contribute, and what the contribution will we have to expect also, yeah? From digitalization? We heard about it, it will happen. So anyways, the issue is always the investments in digitalization, that they are being done when there's a business case. So no, actually, two reasons are for digitalization. First, the regulatory framework is demanding it. Yeah? And second, it leads to a gain in efficiency. Yeah? So otherwise, investments do not take place. Okay. Well, let's come now to the open debate. I've prepared a lot of questions to my panelists. Even if we stay till the evening, it will not work, because I also intend to involve you from the audience strongly in this debate, so we will have to bit short. But Robert told me that we can take a bit of his time also for the concluding remarks, so that's that we still have, for instead of 60 minutes, but 50 minutes for the debate, and there we should be able to work out a few nice statements, yeah, also which we can then later on publish on the websites of our organizations. Well. Let me come back to the first interventions here and presentations from SYNERGETICS. Yeah? I said the investment rate in new vessels, and among them zero emissions are even the smaller number. Yeah? Okay, 5-6 vessels I think are now running on hydrogen. For example, a few on battery. Even if we now approaching know what technologies are ready, what are, let's say, suitable for the type of vessel, for the operational profile of the vessel, it will take some time also to do the retrofitting, Benjamin. Yeah? So 5 years for retrofitting of hundreds of vessels or thousands of vessels is not adequate, it's not realistic. Yeah? Looking into the capacity of the European shipyards. So let me be a little bit provocative. So from the side of the inland navigation sectors, from the barge operators, the ports cannot expect some measurable contributions for CO2 savings, for greenhouse gas savings. Is it really like this? Khalid Tachi from ACP is working on this issue heavily also in the Netherlands on behalf of the government and the inland navigation sector. Please.
Yes, thank you, Manfred, for this question. As a person, but also as ICB, we are always optimistic. So there is always a way toward. We have the time. We have 25 years to get at this zero. It's not expected from us to do that tomorrow. We have in several presentations already seen that there are low-hanging fruit drop-in fuels like HVO. And for older vessels, we are looking also at FAME as a cheaper alternative from this biofuel perspective. The FAME is need more attention than HVO. Good housekeeping on board, but also sensitivity of a catalyst, for example. If you have a catalyst, then it's not advised. And we should not, let's say, judge the steps that we are taking at this moment for its speed. By this, I mean, Sasha just mentioned it, we are shifting from market-driven development to a policy or societal-driven approach. And the goal is set, but the road to it is not clear yet. and as IACB in general, but looking at the pilots at this moment, indeed, they are few, but we are learning a lot from them. They are subsidized to tackle these issues, these problems, whether it's technical, whether it's business case, whether it's legislations, etc. So I think we should be careful not to judge these 4 vessels on hydrogen and these few battery sailing vessels, but we should look at it from perspective of we are learning about electrification of existing vessels. The first one are not cheap. The prices are getting higher and higher. So which lessons can we learn? How can we scale up? How can we approach mass production or rebuilding, taking a lot of considerations into account? And we should also move away from the approach that we always did, especially inland vessel operators, isolated always from an own perspective. Here you need the whole chain. If you want to make a difference, you need the whole chain to be involved. Your customer is required, your port is required, your technology provider is required, etc., etc. But we are still approaching it too much in individual actions, in silos, etc. So what needs to be facilitated is this bigger approach. In the beginning of this morning, we heard about this scope 3, which is for everybody a huge step. So no one knows this land of scope 3. So everybody is looking and searching. And we need a lot of funding. We are very happy with the example of the Dutch ministry, who is now providing approximately 250 million for the coming 5-6 years for this enabling and speeding up this energy transition towards zero. It will not fly in 2 years, but it's facilitating ahead. And one of the advice we have from ICB is to team up with European possibilities like the Innovation Fund. You can only apply if the business case is there, maturity is high. So how can you team up to make more use as a sector of these possibilities? In the past, we were not that successful, but there are chances to become more and more successful. So long answer, summarizing, there are solutions that we can make use of tomorrow if somebody pays for it, like HVO. So then again, it's a chain responsibility. It's not an operator, vessel operator responsibility. And we have, luckily, a proof of concept already with zero emission technologies. We have this future-proof shipping vessels with hydrogen. Next week, the 4th will be put at place from HCS in the Netherlands. We have these battery systems. These batteries are getting more and more energy dense. It started with less than 1 megawatt hour. It's now up 3, and this progress is ongoing. The more we can optimize, and actually my message is in general, we should not look at growing, but optimizing. And within this optimizing, there is growth. It's a bit cryptic, but optimizing the logistic systems is key. And there you need digitalization, you need data, but you need energy efficiency, and this energy efficiency you can evolve toward this 2050. I hope.
No, a very important statement. I was really provocative, as I said, also, what is it, what the ports can expect from the navigation sector. We know that there is progress, and all these research projects, raising the technological maturity of the solutions, and the pilot projects, also bringing evidence, proof of concept. Yep. But nevertheless, the next steps will have to follow. Khaled, you are also a coordinator of a project, Platform for Action. And in this project, where we have also, as a Danube Commission, the privilege to be a partner, we are aiming in bringing a certain number of vessels, significant number, it should be, that's our aim, with mature technologies, with the same type of vessels, similar operational profiles, into the Innovation Fund, for financial support, with the intention to scale up the technologies and to roll out, to get it a certain minimum number of technical solutions into the market. Yeah, so this is the next step to break into the market with these innovations. And I think if we manage to get this the Innovation Fund project as an output of the work of the Platform 4, I think then I think we will gain in speed. Yeah? So that's the intention, because then also the market itself starts to work on this. Yeah? This is one issue. Khaled?
Yeah, coming back to also the chances and the optimist that we are, it's in the next future, it's all about energy, and let inland waterway transport be in the most energy efficient modality in inland transport. So shift to inland waterway is already a gain, and this should be more and more and more be promoted. So shifting either with fossil, you gain at least 50% of your CO2 performance if you shift from road, for example, to water. And then you gain momentum to prefer to get this shift to zero. I think those are two key elements that we should focus on.
Fully agree with you, but in the political debate, this comes quite often short. So we will have to do our exercise not only on the 6th of November now in the next event, but also the future events, and also with regard to the new settings of the European Commission and the new Parliament in particular, and also towards the governments of our member states. One last remark to, let's say, the greening of the fleet. We had here in this premises on the 8th of October a very interesting, and I would say really a milestone workshop with the barge operators and the member states, where we were discussing also for the dominant vessel type and the dominant operational scheme, big pushers long distances. What is the solution for greening? And there we found out, and it was a common understanding, that HVO, hydrotreated vegetable, is a very good solution for the next, I would say, 10 years, most likely, to achieve a significant greenhouse gas savings. And that's for us now here the next steps to go as part of a strategy and the roadmap, which will be elaborated by the Danube Commission together with the priority area 1A of the Danube region strategy. So I think this is a bit looking into what we can achieve, what the ports can achieve from the inland navigation sector. And now I would like to come to the ports themselves. So what are your efforts and where are you on the way here to reduce greenhouse gas emissions? I might call the beginning again Werner, because Werner, you are obviously, as a kid, you like to play puzzle, because you're using your European Union funded project now since several years to form your strategy. not only for greening, but also for digitalization. So where are you now? So how much CO2 savings will you deliver in 2030?
Well, concrete question, concrete answer. I hope that we can deliver savings approximately 30% until 2030. Yeah? 30% from the actual situation. We heard today that this is very tricky in order to make your concrete figures CO2 equivalent due to the scope 1, 2, 3. We are approximately 89% ready with our CO2 balance according to this CSRD regime, scope 1, 2, 3. And we see from this that what we can do now by ourselves is that shoreside electricity is the first thing what you can do. We are aware that what Khalid said, the vessels by transport bring much more CO2 equivalent savings, but this is far away from realization. Yeah? Today we have reality check. If there will not be a change in fuel, then nothing will happen. HVO is good, yeah, no problem. But please consider how much percent of the Danube fuel will HVO bring in the next years? This is far away. This is far away. So if the market will not change for the fuel itself, by mixing, by blending, by things like this, 5%, 10%, 20%, but this is a really huge amount, then nothing will happen on this way. So you can consider and concentrate on these first steps, what you as a port can do with your infrastructure. And this is shoreside electricity, and this is photovoltaics. These are the first steps in order to get ahead. And that's my credo from the first input. Just do it. Don't wait for the 100% zero emission solution anywhere and anyhow in the future. Just do it and bring 10%, 20%. But do it.
Thank you. Strong statement. Reflections from the table online. Yes, please.
You'll remember my contribution on the 8th from my remote presentation when I was talking about HVO. And yes, it does bring potentially significant savings. But as I mentioned then, you can't do it without energy policy and prioritization as to where it goes in the overall transport system. Between that presentation and now, I've also given a presentation to the Freight Transport Association of Ireland, mainly road-based. They also want HVO. Almost half their seminar was about people wanting HVO. And there's only going to be so much that goes around. And we need to again, think about energy policy and where the alternatives are. So just reiterating that point from the 8th, but with more evidence to back it up.
Well, we also discussed these massive volumes of HVO, which obviously are needed, how to bring them also in the supply and distribute them all over the regions. Again, I think we have to be aware that we will not have only one fuel in the future, one alternative fuel. HVO for us here in the Danube region is that's the only solution out for the big pushers and the big distances. Yeah. So as we can also say, and the zero emission example CES has shown, battery electric works short distances, smaller vessels, that is most likely coming sooner than later. Yeah, it is already there. Okay, business cases, they are really, really difficult as long as polluting is still for free. Yeah? So once also the navigation sector, for example, will have to pay for the greenhouse gas emissions, yeah, coming from the use of the diesel, then I think that will change. So the regulatory framework and the governance framework, I think, will play in favor. But this is a slow progress. Yeah? And now I think the tricky thing is, as Sasha has mentioned also here, to find business cases which already work under, let's say, certain conditions. Yeah? Okay. So much to the fleet and to the expectations also from Werner Auer, 30% greenhouse gas emissions 2030. I think that's a good value. Considering also the fact, please correct me, Werner, that your throughput and your transshipment volumes are intended to grow. So that means that the CO2 intensity will have to be reduced significantly, correct? You're not closing down activities.
Not really,
just to
Manfred.
save CO2 emissions.
I said that I don't expect any quick changes in the fuel part of the emission equivalence. Yeah? I would be very happy if it comes. Yeah? Probably CO2 pricing, things like this. But when you have a look what is developing here in the last 5 years or in the last 10 years, then I don't expect that there will come really considerable amounts for your port balance due to the emission of the fuel part, yeah, which even counts for your balance due to the scope 3. Yeah, I expect the improvements, I said, for the 20-30 years by what you can do by yourself in your infrastructure. You can implement shoreside electricity, you can implement photovoltaics, and you can streamline your offices, your premises, in order to bring scope 1 and 2 emissions to a better way. And this is what I see, what will come and what I can influence directly. Due to the fuel market, we as a small port can do nothing. Even if you have a bunkering station here. But if the market will not change, nobody will develop here. Even if some vessels run by HVO, but as you said, this is only a drop on the old stone, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Vladimir, I'm looking to you. You mentioned that your strategy, your let's say your biggest weapon in the belt at the moment is onshore electricity. Yeah, try to bring the electricity to the shore side, let the vessels plug in. What can you expect in CO2 in the greenhouse gas emission savings from this policy?
Well, regarding the percentage, I cannot be exact because it will be surely less than there is now. But following the increase of the number of the cruise vessels, if we cover at least 5 terminals for passenger terminals with OPS, it will be a significant decrease in the CO2 emissions and a first step towards the decarbonization of the inland waterway transport in Serbia, especially for the cruise vessels as a biggest consumption of the energy in waterways.
When it comes to port operations, I know that this is not, let's say, within the range of your decision making. Yeah. So how do you inspire port operators to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions?
Well, one idea is I have one idea. It's regarding the implementing renewable energy sources. By implementing renewable energy sources, which is who are the beneficiary port operators. For example, we are inspiring them to change their equipment towards the electric power equipment, for example, forklifts and other equipment that are now mostly in Serbia diesel powered. But if we enable them to use cheap energy, produce on site, it would be a business model for them and a decrease of the emissions in the port area.
Yeah, I understand, I see, but remember also yesterday the intervention from Mrs. Gidl-Murzik from Wien Container Terminal, so that she pointed out the high costs of green port equipment running on batteries. Yeah, so ports are really faced with the dilemma of having to make green investments and implement emission-reducing measures in a relatively short period of time, while the economic objectives with these investments are different. Yeah.
Well, port operators cannot carry this burden alone. In EU countries, EU is the main focus for the financing. In Serbia, the state budget is the main focus, and hopefully,
Hello, China.
And hello, China, and hopefully hello, EU. So we are looking on all directions for the financing of the projects for the future, for the green future.
Yeah, thank you, Vladimir. Bella, you have many port operators in your association. How do they deal with that dilemma?
So yes, as you mentioned before, we have more than 30 different kind of ports. Majority of them in private. What does it mean? That personally, I am also representing a port or a terminal. We are paying from the pocket without so much support. So we are in the same position than in Serbia. Might be our prime minister is in a good relationship because of this with your prime minister. I don't know. We are in the same club with very limited financing behind us. Some of the private ports are able to finance this kind of greening, for example, the shore electricity supplier. The platform, what I mentioned, which is a digital platform, it doesn't cost too much because we can use the RIS, the River Information Service. So it's very simple because it's few thousand euro and we can cooperate. And also we can check on a real-time basis the ETA, estimated time of arrival of the vessels on the Hungarian section. So I guess that it doesn't cost too much. So we can follow this, but going back to the vessels, they are sitting some naval architects. If I am as an owner, we have one vessel over 100 years, so more than 100 years old, older than my grandmother. If I am going to you and ask you to plan a brand new, very green, very low emission vessel, it's cost about 6 million euro. If I'm going to buy a normal, not green, it's cost about half of this. So this is one of the reasons why it's very difficult from the owner's side. And also we have battle with the cruising vessels. Why? Because the crew from the cargo sector moving to them. Because the captain told me that, Mrs. Sama, Captain, you are very, very fair. You are paying 4,000 euro per month. They are paying double. And that's why The lack of double. Do you have the certificate for this?
I can get one, no worries.
It takes 7 years to get the license.
Please, those with the certificate, Podmaster certificate, don't leave before the lunch, yeah? Stay with us. Sasha, don't do.
So he agreed with this. So I think that the Hungarian ports, in one hand, are very proud because we invested during the last 15 years more than 35 billion forints. We are very modern. Our capacity is over 20 million tons, but this capacity is much more, 3 times more than the market need. So this is, let's say, the gap. So I don't need another crane. I don't need another technology because our technology is able to handle 200 tons per hour. I don't need 300 tons because there is no enough cargo. And we have to take also into consideration. In one hand, we are going to reduce the emission. On the other hand, I try to increase the emission in order to shift the cargo from the road, from the rail to the river. Instead of 5-6 million tons, achieve 20 million tons. What does it mean? The river vessels will will be much more than today. In one hand. On the other hand, we can save much more because from the road runners we can take the cargo because I guess that their emission is 10 times, 15 times more than on the river. So this is the minimum.
Yep, thank you. Sasha, you wanted to say something with regard to funding.
Absolutely. I leave the business case for the captain on the side at the moment. But when we talk about the timeline and the funding, I think it's quite important to look one more time. Do we talk about 2030, 2040, 2050, and where should the money come from? At the end of the day, it says by 2050, we need to be net zero. But if you just look at the timeline right now 2024, 2025, there is, again, the Innovation Fund used to have 40 billion euros in it. I think right now we're at 20 billion, somewhere in this range. If you just think about the rate of funding that's available right now, I personally, or we as the association, we do not expect that to continue until 2050. So I think coming back to the business case and coming back to what's going to happen, we need to consider that if we don't decarbonize now, and if we wait until 2040, let's talk about the late movers, the cost of operating will be extremely high simply because there will be emission trading systems, ETD taxation systems behind it that will make it very expensive. So it's not the transition that's going to be expensive, it's the fact that we're operating on fossil fuel in 2040, that will be expensive. So I think if we have a chance to actually make sure that we can finance the transition, then it will have to happen in the next 10 years. Because if you just again look at the funding pots available, right now they are available. Right now you can apply for it. Right now you can finance a large part of the technology transition through the funding, up to 60%, sometimes even higher. That's possible right now. But again, that's not only for the first movers, it's also for the second movers. But I do not anticipate that this is available for the third movers, which are the ones who are going to be looking at that after 2040. And that's why I think from a timeline perspective, you can only take a consortium approach, which means you're saying you've got a lot of different ports, individual ports together, but you can only work together on the funding approach as well. Give the European Union a sector solution and apply now, because even if you apply today, you only have to implement it in a couple of years. You don't have to implement it tomorrow. That's why, again, I think 2050 is a nice timeline, but you need to look into the next 10 years. Otherwise, it's going to be very difficult to pay for either one of the two.
Yeah, I think it's also a strong message and a clear message. We should not fall not only not in the technology gap and trap, let me say, but also not fall into the governance trap, yeah, waiting that the governance system works so much in favor that greening becomes a good investment, yeah. So because then we will have a business case, yeah. But I think we will really have to look into the situation with public funding to create in niches really business cases where it is possible. And I think also in particular here I see the responsibility also of the port administrations in their areas of competence, because those are usually public organizations, and the public organizations, from my understanding, they will also have to make a step into the right direction, and not only a little step, but also a more forceful step. And then, let's say, also having this leadership function for the private sector. Yeah, I think this is good already summary. Yeah? There is one small little question I would like to raise. Port are logistic hubs and centers for industrial activities. That's what we have heard. So greening of ports requires also to green the entire port location. Yeah? This is something what we should not forget. Yeah? And what are successful strategies, actions that the stakeholders can be mobilized and can really start the collaboration, teaming up for making this green transition happen. So are there experiences? For example, our colleagues from ports of Switzerland and Duisburg, yeah, if you are still there on the table, are you working with your operators, with the industrial businesses in the port area?
Hi, Enrique here from Porto Vienna. I can just give a small example about, because we've been carrying out like CO2 accounting 2019 and 2022 with the Energy Agency, and a large part obviously is for CO2 emissions is the fleet, as we already discussed, and also but the like personal mobility from the people going to the port. And that's just a small example, but to show you that we do roundtables with all the companies at our port and discuss how we make a concept, like, for example, for the mobility for our workers. That's like one thing. And now maybe with the also the Sea Delft and the new tool, where we are actually really want to sit together also with Wincont and fill out the tool, and then see how maybe with them we can reach and talk to the stakeholders about this topic. That's just.
Thank you. Other comments for this question? If not, I leave it like this. Is there something, somebody on the table who would like to raise a topic or make a statement? Last chance before I give back to Robert for his concluding remarks. Everything said? Everything clear? No more wishes? No more questions to the panelists? If this is the case, nothing. So then I would like to thank the panelists for their presentations, yeah, and also for sharing their knowledge, ideas, and good statements, yeah, with us. Thank you. And I would like to give back to Robert for his next step.
Thank you very much for rolling up. Yep. Thank you very much for rolling out this very exciting panel discussion, the reality check. And I think it really came to reality check. So we discussed about concrete numbers, concrete actions. If I want to summarize today's takeaways, I think I also noted some words like consortium approach, energy efficiency, We need to look at the whole chain and not all, it's not what we say when it comes to greening the fleet. It's not only the vessel owners and operators who need to carry the weight. When it comes to ports, it's also not only the ports who need to care about all those aspects of greening and digitalization. Very happy to see good practices. Of course, more questions will pop up, but as I think Khalid was saying, and many others, Werner was saying, let's start and let's see. And 10 years ago, we never thought that there would be automatic electric car coming for us, picking us up without a driver with zero emissions, and it exists. So all in all, I would like to come to some concluding or practical concluding remarks. We would like to reuse your badges, so please either leave them on the table here inside the room when leaving, or there is a paper box outside at the exit. The presentations, there were some questions. The presentations and part of the recording we will check, but the presentations will definitely be online on our website and on the Danube Ports Network's website. So please come back to our website and LinkedIn profile soon. Many of you have already done that during the past days. Thank you for that. And we will publish these documents, pictures, and the presentations somewhere in the upcoming 1 week. And we are happy to receive your feedback as well. There will be a short survey published among the ones who were participating either online or here on site. We hope, on behalf of the entire team, we hope that you enjoyed the past 2 days, at least on the level as we enjoyed organizing it from late February. And then I can just come to the most risky part of my task, to thank the people behind and in front of this, especially the participants online and here on site, taking the efforts to travel despite, as mentioned, in some countries we have days off. I would like to thank the team of the Danube Commission Secretariat, the team of Manfred, especially Diane over there, Oana, I think she is also organizing somewhere around, and huge thanks to Zoltán for preparing all the technique, the videos, the presentations, and keeping all that alive. I would also like to thank Leila from the ECORIS team for the event management part, the MultiRELOAD team for preparing and rolling out. Yesterday, I have Jan-Christoph is still there. The MultiRELOAD team led by Duisport, SYNERGETICS again, Benjamin as project leader from DST, Emmanuel from TTS, and last but not least, my direct team, Christian, Charlotte, and obviously Herfried as the president of Pro Danube International for your input. And most probably I have left out some people, but I think these were the more important things from my side. Also a very good cooperation with the Green Inland Ports project for the ECORIS team. But I would like to ask Christian and Charlotte again to stand up, and a big applause for the two of them for organizing this. And really last message on behalf of the host and the organizers, Danube Commission and Pro Danube, the buffet is open. We are happy to welcome you for a networking lunch outside as yesterday as well. Thank you very much and see you soon.
Robert, you have been too fast? No, I don't let you go. Don't let you go. Danube Ports Days 2025. Any plans?
Yes, but plans are there to be changed, so we started to change the plans. There will be Danube Ports Days in 2025. Original intention, but don't take that as granted, was coming together with Constanza. The idea behind might be to group again with some more events, for example, the final event of the Green Inland Ports project, but that we definitely need to discuss. There will be Danube Ports Days 2025. Yes.
So that's good news. And those which cannot wait that long, autumn 2025, are cordially invited for the 25th of March. Synergy workshop in the afternoon, and then on the 26th of March, expert group meeting of the Danube Ports here in the same theater. Thank you very much, and enjoy the buffet.